Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Jim Cornette Experience, where today we're going to talk about week 2 of the showdown at the Empty Arena Corral, the Great American Bash versus Fyter Fest. Which show was better today? We will attempt to pick up a turd by the clean end once again. Plus, our friend Al Getz is going to stop by with some old territory wrestling statistics. We'll have a few comedic stories, possibly a musical interlude or two. And right now, to join me, my cohort and co-host, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's Swammy's pappy, the golden voice of wrestling, your friend and his, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim, and thank you very little. What a pleasure it is to be here once again.
Thank you very little. You're welcome even less. Is that what you're trying to say? For some reason, people still remember that from the Slammies 25 years ago when I said that.
I remember thank you very little from Caddyshack, but then you introduced you're welcome even less.
You're welcome even less. See, I'm constantly upping the ante. I'm raising the bar.
Did you have a good time at the Slammies that night?
It was palatable. It was fun. Todd Pettingzoo was hilarious with his opening bit. And Michael Hayes really did want to win that fucking award. And there was a late surge for me. I think he had Finkel calling in, trying to vote for him.
What award was that?
The Blue Light Special for worst dressed.
Well, he'd win it now. Hands down.
Well, if it was a shoot, he'd have won it then. But it was I don't know how they determined those votes. But I know he wanted to win it, and I could give a shit.
When did he start dressing like a desperate pimp? Because the Freebirds had a specific look. I mean, he wore a black t-shirt. He was trying to be kind of a rock and roll guy in the 80s, but not to the extent of the Rock and Roll Express. Then somewhere along the way, he started wearing the fedoras. He started wearing the zoot suits. When did this happen and how?
Hey, 23 Skidoo. And he turned into like he's at a cross between a desperate pimp and a black Baptist preacher in the pastel colors. And I don't know. I don't know. But and I just wish he'd get his sleeves tailored on the jackets. But nevertheless, earlier I was going to introduce you as the golden throat of wrestling, but I didn't want to get those rumors started. But you've got a bunch of programs on the AV network, the Arcadian Vanguard network, and we've got Al Getz on today later on to talk about the newest one. And I'll have you know, thanks to you and the Cult of Cornette members, I'm going to gain 20 pounds.
Really?
Because the only way that I was able to watch both AEW and NXT in the same day, back to back, to do this review for the week 2 of this showdown was to promise myself greasy burgers and tater tots straight out of the deep fryer tonight. And if I have to do this very much longer, I'm going to be fucking fat again. And I've maintained my girlish figure over the course of the pandemic when I've been closed up in the house. But not this way. I'm not going to.
You prefer tater tots to traditional French fries or steak fries or waffle fries or any other version?
No, during a pandemic when the only flash fried, frozen fried tater goods that you have is tater tots, that's what you're going to have. Actually, I like the extra crispy golden crinkles in the deep fryer. But tater tot, and they also have, but I save these for breakfast time. They have tater tot, not tater tot, but basically the fried potato patties like you would get at Arby's, except without the Arby's oil that has the secret ingredient that causes you to just shit anally all over yourself just at any given point. No, everybody knows that.
Right? I don't know that.
No, okay. Okay, now everybody weigh in on Twitter. Because, by the way, on Twitter, I'm still getting the fucking Russian bots and the right-wing crackpots knocking me on Twitter for knocking Wendy's 2 months ago. And then I got in that story on the internet and the bots got on to me. And they're like, well, I'll just go to Wendy's and eat twice as much now because of you libtard. They're still out there. I don't think there's 17 real people, real human beings that actually exist left on Twitter.
I've never been to an Arby's.
You have never been to Arby's?
No, the slogan, we have the meats or whatever it is, that turns me off.
Well, no, we have the shits. I'm telling you, everybody on Twitter that can vouch for me needs to get on Twitter and verify this and confirm this, that if you go to Arby's and eat anything, if you go to Arby's and drink a fountain drink, if you go to Arby's and wipe your mouth with one of the napkins, you'll get to raging shits. It's good going down, but it's hell coming back out. And I don't know if it's in the, because it's not just one product. Anytime you go to Arby's and eat anything, you will get the shits, and you will have anal seepage, projectile diarrhea, sharts everywhere. You won't be able to emit one dry fart. It will be a shart, even if you don't eat the Arby's sauce.
So why go back there? I mean, it sounds like you've been there multiple times.
Well, over the course of 50 years, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But I don't go there often. Anyway, but I'm going to gain weight watching these programs. And I'm in a decent mood this week for once, because I've had a variety of halfway fun and interesting things happen. I have not been out in public mixing with the non-mask wearing cretins out there. I saw a great television program by accident. On ESPN this past weekend, they may be rerunning it. I think they ran it at least twice. You got to check ESPN, because I'm flipping through the cable guide, right? And I'm looking for something I might be interested in watching, and maybe listening to as background when I was packing action figures the other day. And I cross ESPN and it says live at the Forum on ESPN. Well, I wouldn't have given that another look. I think it's the Lakers or it's whatever, except that it happened that the program ID fell on that, and it showed me what it was. Guess what live at the Forum on ESPN was?
My first thought was the Lakers. I don't know.
A fucking Eagles concert.
On ESPN?
Yes. Live at the Forum, and it had the Roman numeral for 2018, MCM... whatever the fuck 2018 works out to be, right? And that's all it said. But then if in the program ID, it had the Eagles concert, and it was from, obviously, I just mentioned 2018, after Glenn Fry had died. And they brought in his son, Deacon Fry, and Vince Gill, the country star, who did a decent job. I'm not a fan of his. To take up the Glenn Fry parts, and it was shot in high def, 3-hour fucking long, unseen Eagles concert, brand new. I was just tickled pink, or pickled shitless, or whatever the fuck it may be. But you wouldn't have known. You would, if you were looking for an Eagles concert that you had never seen before, shot in high def from the Los Angeles Forum, you would not go to ESPN.
No, I usually am not looking for HD Eagles concerts from 2018.
What? Well, why wouldn't you be?
No Don Felder.
Oh, come on.
The best guitar player they ever had in that band. He's not
now,
there.
Wait a minute. Oh, Joe Walsh is going to knock you the fuck out,
Don Felder was better with the Eagles than Joe Walsh.
Oh, fuck fingers. He was a little whiny baby, and he didn't want to go along with the program when fucking Don and Glenn were fucking taking over, and he got ousted.
Right there. Because the program was, we're not going to pay you. We're going to oust you. So he didn't want to go with the program. And by the way, he won. He beat them in court.
He wrote a whiny book, though. But I'm telling you, got to go out of your way to see this concert, because not only, and I'm telling you, Deacon Fry, he not only can sing, he looks good. You could tell he was a little fucking trepidatious to be up there in front of that crowd and in that situation and everything, but he'll grow into it. But Joe Walsh is a madman. Don Henley, everybody says Don Henley is a classic male vocalist. Oh. Well, a classic asshole, but a classic male vocalist. But my favorite vocalist remains, and Joe Walsh is a gimmick babyface. Nobody sounds like that. He doesn't sound good, but he sounds good for Joe Walsh, right? But Timothy B. Schmidt, what a guy. He's got to be close to 70. He can still hit the fucking high notes.
What did he do? One album with them originally?
Away, something makes me turn around and stay, and I can't tell you why. He does it just like that.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He was the second best bass playing vocalist in the band.
Oh, come on.
Come on, take it to the limit. He didn't sing that.
It's not his fault he wasn't in the band yet.
So he was the second best bass-playing vocalist in the band. And by the way, Don Felder, when he sued the Eagles, who defended the Eagles in court? Do you know?
I can't remember, actually.
Michael Avenatti.
Oh, my. Okay. No wonder I couldn't remember. I didn't know I needed to remember at that point that he would do something later on. I can't believe that you're goddamn pro-Felder and anti-Walsh.
I'm not anti-Walsh. No, you're twisting what I said.
I'm a word twister now?
You're a word twister. I think Walsh is good, but I think Felder was the best guitar player the Eagles ever had.
Right.
Go listen to Already Gone. Go listen to what he did on that track.
He was very good. I was mocking him earlier. He was very good.
And his book is good, too.
It's a shame that things didn't turn out well in the end, but these things happen.
And you mocked his book. His book is good. I believe he was the guitar teacher for Tom Petty when Tom Petty was a kid.
Well, he did do that also. But where is he now? He's not on the stage at the Forum. You know,
counting his money.
I'm sitting there at the Forum, and I'm thinking, who else these days in the wrestling business? I don't know that they run it anymore, but who else in the wrestling business can say they main evented the LA Forum? I main evented the LA Forum. Didn't fucking draw. No, Crockett went out there in, what was it, late summer of '86, the debut at the LA Forum, because Vince had the sports arena, right? And there was no pond at that point. And we drew 10,000 people, did a $100,000 house. And that wasn't bad. And that's where, you know, as a matter of fact, that's the night we pissed Tully off because my friend Steve Hurst that ran Vivid Video was there. And he brought Ginger Lynn and Jamie Summers. And his girlfriend at the time was Lonnie Sanders. She had a starring role in one of my favorite 70s flicks. But anyway, I digress. And they're up at the Forum Club, and they're going to take us out to dinner after the show. Me and Stan. Bobby went that time. Then he didn't want to go around the porn girls anymore after that. He was embarrassed, I think. But anyway, they're going to take us out to dinner afterwards, and fucking Tully comes running down in the locker room and announces to Flair and Arn and everybody, goddamn, guess who's in the Forum Club? And everybody said, who? Ginger Lynn and Jamie Summers. And they were the two biggest names in porn at this given point in time, right? And, you know, Flair goes, oh, and Arn goes, whoo, and Stan kind of giggled, and Tully said, well, what's the matter, Lane? You not impressed? He said, no, I knew they were there. We're going out to dinner with them tonight. And Tully said, how the fuck did you handle that? And Stan just looked over at me and said, oh, Corny introduced us. Fucking Tully looked at me like I had turds hanging out of my mouth. But anyway, so the first show was a main event. Our first show drew 10,000 people and was a big deal. And then they come back 2 months later and did 75 grand, about 7,500 people. And then they came back 2 months later. This is January, right after the Starrcade 86, we did a scaffold match. That's when I got to main event the Forum. Midnight and Road Warriors, the scaffold match, drew 5,000 people. That was not fun.
No, it had to be after that, because Stan didn't join the group until a few months after that in 87.
Oh, goddamn, that's right. Well, then in that case, it was another time at the LA. The last time we were at the LA Forum, that didn't draw anything. We were going to fucking dinner with them. Nevertheless, the point I was trying to make with this story was they fucking went to Los Angeles like they did. Remember when World Class went to fucking Boston and Lynn, Massachusetts, and at this old, broken down, old outdoor building, they drew 6,000 or 7,000 or 8,000 people or whatever it was, a big house, because it was brand new and they'd never seen it before. But then when they kept, that same thing Crockett did, they kept going back to the same place, and the law of diminishing returns in these places where Vince had a foothold. The first time we went to the goddamn Meadowlands, it was $100,000 house. And by the time, what was it? By the time that, I think, didn't Sting finally win the belt there at some point in 92 or whatever?
What happened was, we actually just reviewed that period of time on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now. He did a bus trip to that Meadowlands show. The first one in April of 1990, I believe the advance was over $100,000. Like, it looked like it was going to sell out. It was a big deal. And then, like you said, the law of diminishing returns, they kept going back. It got a little smaller. Sting lost the NWA title to Flair during a blizzard.
That's right.
In 1991.
Yeah, what was there, like 1,100 people there or whatever the fuck?
Yeah.
And the point is, they would go to these places that Vince had a foothold in. With Los Angeles specifically, the local territory had not been hot for over 10 years at that point and had been dead for, 7 or 8, for all intents and purposes. And Vince had come in early to Los Angeles with Hogan. And that was showbiz wrestling, and that was what Los Angeles wanted to see at that point. And they didn't get us. Just like when Vince went to fucking Greensboro, they didn't get them. But the people were telling Crockett, oh, keep going to these major, arenas. It'll look good. You're supposed to be in Los Angeles and all these places against Vince. So we'd fly all the way fuck across the country and draw the same amount of people as we could draw in Greenville, South Carolina. And it was a lot bigger building. But anyway.
That's nothing, though. Polynesian Pro Wrestling. Liam Maivia ran the Olympic Auditorium in, I want to say, 86 with Jerry Lawler on top.
Yes.
And I believe they drew 50 people. Like, no one was there. And they had some names. They had Jimmy Snuka and some other people. 50 people.
Well, yeah, it's because they had a TV show in Hawaii and everybody knew what was going on there. But in the United States, it was on the Financial News Network with a stock market crawl on weekday afternoons. And they thought they were going to fucking somehow take over California. And there were actually people on the card that were members of the Federal Witness Protection Program, and they were in no danger. But anyway, I saw that and memories of the Forum, and you're right. It was the last and final time that we ran the Forum that Stan was there, and we went to dinner with Steve Hirsch, and I still have the picture. The pictures are in the Midnight Express scrapbook, by the way. I still have one of them up on my wall. I've never seen Stan with a smile so big as when he's got Ginger Lynn on one side of him and Jamie Summers on the other. But he was worried at the same time because he and Jamie Summers stayed in contact for a little while, but it was a long distance thing, on the phone or whatever. But he was like, fuck, he knew he was a good wrestler, right? He was a professional wrestler. He'd been in the ring with the best and he'd held his own. But he wondered if anything was to happen between him and Ginger Lynn. In that case, he's in a whole new world. How would he stack up against the professionals? A talented amateur such as himself that never actually took the step to being paid for relations.
It's amazing how many of the big shots of pornography, and specifically that period of pornography, were big wrestling fans. I mean, Paul Fishbein, big wrestling fan too.
Yep. Started AVN. That's why I have 7,000 pounds of AVN magazines in my closet. Because Paul had me on the comp list for like 20 years. And they were very nicely done magazines. But anyway, some other old stories. I talked to Dennis Condrey a couple days ago. And he's doing well. He's like me, staying away from everybody because he had the treatments for his cancer several years ago. And so he's staying away from everybody, mowing the yard and being peaceful at home. But every time we talk about old stories, right? And you remember when this happened? You remember when that happened? We did this. And somehow, I can't even remember what story led us to it, but goddamn, I was laughing till my face was hurt. Because he reminded me, and then I told him back the story of, did I ever tell you when Bobby Eaton in 1983 agreed to dog sit for Bill Dundee?
No, you did not.
Okay. Well, it helps everybody to know that Bobby Eaton, as many people have said, is the nicest guy in the history of the wrestling business. And we've told stories how we'd go to the store to get some beer after a match, and he'd see a homeless bum, and he'd end up buying the guy groceries and beer and patting him on the back and shaking his hand in new clothing, whatever. Whenever you ask Bobby Eaton to do anything for you, his first reaction is immediately yes. And how can I do this? And how quick can I do this? Let's go do it right now. Whether it's to help you out something or jump your car or fix a flat or borrow something. We've talked about, he had those big bags where, he'd hand out a dozen towels every night to guys. Well, in this case, it was the Thanksgiving time of 1983. We had just gone down, done our first Mid-South Television taping in Shreveport for Watts. And all of us were living in Nashville because we were all going down as part of the talent trade. Me, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, Terry Taylor, Buddy Landell, and Bill Dundee was going to be the booker. So we go down to our first TV, which was the day before the Wednesday night, Thanksgiving Eve night, right? The day before Thanksgiving. We did 2 tapes, and then Thanksgiving, we flew back home to Nashville, and Dundee invited us over to his house to have dinner. And we did. That was very nice of him. And then it helps you also to know that Bobby had just become Dundee's son-in-law. That's when he and Donna, Dundee's daughter, had just been married, a year and a half or whatever at that point. So now the following week, we're off. We're still working the Tennessee territory. We're not going back to Louisiana, but Dundee has to go back to Louisiana. Actually, I think he was going to Oklahoma to work with Watts for a week. He was going to be the new booker. He's coming in. They're going to get all their stuff set, right? So he's going to Oklahoma to meet with Watts for a week, and he's taking Beverly, his wife, because she's probably going to go down to Louisiana, look around for some places to fucking live, etc. This big move that's going on. And that's going to leave, since we're all still in town, but Dundee's going to be gone for a week and nobody at the house except for Dundee's huge, giant fucking pit bull. This goddamn dog had a head the size of a fucking toilet seat and these big paws. And if it's reared up on its hind legs, it was as tall as you were, right? A big, mean-sounding pit bull. And it helps for this story also to know that Bobby Eaton is scared of big, mean dogs, right? He's not scared of dogs in general, but big, mean dogs like Arnold Steiner, the Steiner brothers pit bull that used to chase him around the fucking locker room and out in the building. And Arnold could work. So imagine a big fucking big-ass pit bull that can't work. So Bobby is sitting in the locker room one night, and Dundee goes up to him, and he says, will you take care of my dog? I can't remember what the dog's name was, but take care of my dog, Butte. You got to take care of my dog. Feed my dog, water my dog, come over, make sure he's okay. Okay, Bill, I'll do it. Well, then over the course of building this up over a couple of days, every time that Dundee would see Bobby, he'd talk about how many times he need to come over and what he need to feed him, how much water he need to give him, whether he need to let him out. And he said, now, remember, you can't let him out, because if I'm home, I let him out. I can get him back. He'll come back if I want. But if you let him out, you can't let him out. He'll just goddamn run off. He'll be gone. Okay, Bill. So he's got all over all these details. And finally, it's almost time for Dundee to leave, and that's when he hit him with the big news. He said, now, Butte, and I can't do the accent, but he said, Butte, here's the thing. You're going to feed him. You're going to water him, but you can't let him out. So I'm going to be gone for a week. And the thing is, when I'm home and I let him out, he goes out around the neighborhood and he does his fucking business. He finds some girl dog and he fucks the girl dog, and then he comes back. But you can't let him out. So you're going to feed him and you're going to water him. But if he doesn't come for a whole week that I'm gone, he's going to get fucking mean and he's going to fucking bite your ass and attack you. So at least twice during the time I'm gone, Bobby, you're going to have to jack this dog off.
Oh, no. Come on.
And now Bobby's buying it, and Bobby's with it. He's like, what? No, Butte, I'm telling you. The dog's going to get mean. He's going to bite your ass. He's going to attack you. He's going to get vicious. He's going to come you're going to have to at least twice, Butte, every couple or 3 days. You're going to have to just jack him off, and he'll be all right. And Bobby's like, oh, goddamn, what if he bites me while I'm trying to jack him off? He won't do that. He likes it. So Bill Dundee had convinced Bobby that this dog was going to attack and potentially dismember him over the course of this week unless that Bobby jacked him off at least twice. And Bobby had gone so far as to say okay to it just to get Dundee to shut up with no intention of jacking a dog off. But now he's shitting himself that the fourth day is going to come and he don't give this dog a hand job and the dog is going to fucking attack him and fucking eat him. So finally, if it hadn't been for Dundee cracking up finally the day before he was about to leave and fucking admitting that Bobby didn't have to jack the dog off, Bobby was feeling badly because he was not going to be able to honor the request of giving his dog 2 hand jobs in the course of a week. I guess you had to be there.
Wow.
I don't.
What a nice guy. I tell you.
Why is there always a story about jacking a dog off in a wrestling locker room?
Well, usually the Memphis territory.
Well, Terry Funk was in Amarillo when he saw Bobby Ray Thornton, or what's his name?
He claims it was Billy Bob Thornton. I don't believe it really was.
Bob Thornton.
It couldn't have been.
Well, that's what Terry said. We haven't heard from Billy Bob Thornton on whether he was indeed a dog jacker or not, but
there's no way to deny that without sounding like you did it. I just want to say, despite the rumors, I did not jack off a dog.
Yeah.
I have never jacked off a dog.
I don't know who this guy was going around the country saying that he saw me jacking off a dog because, Anyway, this is an awkward segue, but also I talked to Bullet Bob Armstrong this week.
Oh, good.
Hadn't talked to Bob in ages, but I talked to him this week. Everybody has seen, I guess, on social media, on Twitter or whatever, that he's been fighting cancer for some time now. But Bullet Bob, he's 80. He just had, and unfortunately, he just had his 60th wedding anniversary celebration with his wife, Gail, and she passed away then a couple days afterwards. But 60 years together, and Scott and Brian and Steve were there, and I wish Brad could have been there, but I talked to Bullet, and he said he's having the knockdown, drag out, no time limit, no disqualification Texas death match with the Big C. I said, just back it up in the corner and throw those overhand chops like you used to at me, and it'll fucking slink off and fucking put you over. But it was the same thing. He obviously, he's lost a lot of weight and isn't the big jacked up Bullet Bob that we saw into his 70s, but he sounded exactly the same on the phone. All we did was laugh from start to finish and talk about 10 minutes. And he said, well, I got to go take a shit. And so he sounded exactly like Bullet should sound on the phone. And it just happened to catch him. I just wanted to say to everybody that Bullet Bob sounds great, and we should all appreciate everything that he's given the wrestling business, not only himself, but think of all of his sons over the past 40 years have worked every territory, Scott is now a great referee, but has been an agent, has run towns for Continental in the past as a promoter. Road Dogg, I think he give up, turn over a spot on creative recently, like, get this the fuck away from me. I know that feeling, but he's still an agent and employed by biggest company in the world. Brad still to this day is a guy that everybody holds up as the classic worker. So the whole family, we talked about Steve and the Southern Boys midnight recap we did this past week on the drive-through, but the Armstrong tentacles reach all around the world in wrestling, and Bob should be proud. I've got 2 letters from Bob that I've saved for years. One, when I actually ran his fan club in 1977, the kid in Georgia that started his fan club, and then I joined it, right? Because I joined every fan club so I could get the autographed pictures and the membership card and the bulletins and everything. And I would send the results from here when Bob was in the Tennessee territory to the guy. And finally he wrote me and he said, what would you like to take over the whole club? I don't have time anymore. And that's the first time I would have had a chance to do a program or a bulletin or a magazine. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And I think, Brian, have you seen them? They were like legal size paper, Xerox copies, 20-page bulletins with everything in them. I would fucking put the pictures and type around it with the typewriter and tape the pictures in with double-sided Scotch tape and the whole 9 yards.
I've never seen any of those. I've seen other fan club bulletins from that time, but never your Bob Armstrong one.
I did 3 or 4 of them. I might have to sell copies of those on the website because it was ridiculous what I was spending way too much time and money because the guy that started the club, he sent me the whole club treasury, $3.50. And my first run of bulletins, I went so crazy, it cost like $22. But anyway, I have a letter from Bob because there was a girl that named Janet lived over in Bulls Gap, Tennessee, for all you Knoxvillians and East Tennesseans. She would go to the matches every week. So she took a sheet of questions to have Bob answer so that I could print the interview in the bulletin, right? And she actually handed it to him, and he wrote them down and gave it back to her the next week at the matches. And she sent it back to me, and I've still got that. That was 1977, so I was 16 and he was 37. And that's the first letter that Bob Armstrong ever sent to me. And the second and last letter was from 1993 when I was 32 and he was 53. And it was a thank you note for, in general, the whole summer-long angle, but then the match that we had, and then bringing in Terry Funk to work a program with him, but basically he was in the main event in Knoxville as a wrestler almost 20 years later on shows that were drawing 3,000 plus fans. And he sent me a thank you note for he said this has been a highlight of my career. And I've saved that all that time. So I may have them framed. One of these days I'm going to buy another house just because I need more wall space to frame everything. And I'm just going to have a house that just shit's framed on the walls. You walk in and just look around. It'll be a museum. Anyway, what are you doing over there? You're ignoring me.
I'm listening to you. I like the idea of the Jim Cornette Wrestling Museum.
Yeah, but then the problem is I have to be on the premises to keep anybody from getting sticky fingers. And then if they didn't wear masks, I'd have to throw them out the window. A socially distanced museum.
That would be the problem, yes.
Yeah, well, anyway. All right, before we go any further with this fine program, there is a merchandise update for you fans and customers of Cornette's Collectibles.
Hey kids, are you having fun with your Figures Toy Company Jim Cornette action figure? Well, just when you think you couldn't have any more fun,
it's the Jim Cornette playsets.
Now you can have Jim react to his everyday environments like
the post office.
Comes with Dolly and Ninja Suit. Like Beauty Soul Separately. Pretend Jim is sending out 150 international orders that day and some vacuous, mouth-breathing cretin is getting too close.
Hey, see that line behind you on the floor? It's where you need to be. Getting in space.
Coming soon, bring in John the Hunchback. Sold separately. Then there's the Jim Cornette Home Office. Memorabilia sold separately. Pretend that Jim is going out to the garage. Sold separately. To get some more merchandise that he can't mention on his podcast. Open the garage door to let Bertie Sanders in and out. Bertie Sanders sold separately. Pretend that Jim needs new rolling shelves when he runs out of space for his current supplies.
Goddamn, I have so many supplies that I need rolling shelves with wheels on them.
Rolling shelves not included. Sold separately. And now for the older kids.
It's the Jim Cornette Hot Tub Playset.
Comes with bathrobe and pipe. Have fun in the hot tub. Fun sold separately.
It's the Jim Cornette Playsets.
Yes, just remember, folks, everything is sold separately at Cornette's Collectibles. Thank you. By the way, who took credit for that?
That is our good friend Rocky the Ramone.
That is Rocky the Ramone that took credit for that again. Everything is sold separately with Rocky too. But as far as if you have ordered one of the existing, real, legitimate Jim Cornette action figure variants from last month when we broke the internet, already over 200 figures as we speak, as you hear this for the first time on Friday, July 8th, 9th, somewhere around there.
10th?
10th even. Friday, July 10th. Over 200 figures have already gone out. Priority mail to the fine folks in the United States. More are going out on Saturday morning and Monday morning. International orders are going to be going out next week. The store at jimcornette.com will be reopening next weekend sometime. I don't want anybody to have a goal in mind or a specific time to go to the thing and fucking wreck it again till we get the new website and the new server. But we will be caught up with everything. All orders will be out and figure orders will be filled, and everything will be winding its way to you through the United States mail by mid next week. And I've had listen to this. I've been talking about how the international orders are taking longer because of the pandemic and the customs are backed up and everything. Some people have said, shit, they see the postmark when I actually mailed it. Said it took 8 weeks exactly to get to the United Kingdom from the United States. Somebody just got a T-shirt in 4 days. And I think it was in France. I saw it on Twitter and then I lost it before I could contemplate what was going on. But somebody got one of the T-shirts in like 4 fucking days. I don't know how that happened, but don't expect it. And once that we do reopen the store, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be restocked on anything that's on sale on the store when it reopens is not in danger of selling out. No reason to panic. And we will be filling things as quickly as we can. And we're gonna see how long we can stay up with it. If we get dangerously behind, we'll have to close down again. Because I'm not going to engage in some kind of bait and switch tactic, Brian. Some kind of grift here where I take people's money and cannot give them things in timely fashion. So get your goddamn money in quick, because I don't know how long I'm going to be open this time before I close down again. Next weekend.
That's right.
That's right. Sold separately.
Bertie Sanders.
Bertie got crowded out. Bertie was upset about, I think, the garage door going up and down right next to where he was building that condo, and he went outside the garage door into the evergreen on the end of the driveway and made a little summer place. So I don't have to worry about letting Bertie in and out.
Okay.
You sound like a goddamn psychologist that's just humoring me as I blurt out a variety of things. Brian, if only we had something that could take us away from all this.
If only. You're talking about drugs, right?
No, I'm talking about a way to literally be taken away from all this. Go far away from all these fucking stupid people. People not wearing masks. People supporting a criminal incompetent for president of the United States. If only there was something that we could just hop on and without actually expending any fucking physical effort whatsoever, get far away from all these people.
Something that we can hop on and get far away. Ginger Lynn.
What? No, Jesus Christ. I'm not touching that line with a 10-foot pole. You might be able to hop on her. I'm not sure she could carry you very far. But I'll tell you one thing. Rad power bikes will carry your dead ass a long way, because rad power bikes are the new electric bike that are taking over the whole e-bike fucking department, the whole sector. Because some of these e-bikes, they're expensive, but rad power bikes, they cost as half as much as some of the leading bikes, and they're the largest electric bike brand in North America. You can get on one of these things and go up to 20 miles an hour without pedaling, and it doesn't require a special driver's license. So you can get out and about. You can go biking on the trails and go up and down without getting all sweaty and breaking your back and your legs. You can haul groceries, transport your kids. You even, as a matter of fact, I understand, Brian, that you now have your kids transporting you. They have to get on and you ride on their bike.
Yes, extra lazy.
Yes, extra lazy. But anyway, you can get out in nature. You can do errands. You can get out and about without destroying the environment and burning up all that nasty gas, all that and more with the rad power bikes. And even though it's also a great alternative to public transportation, even though they love the first responders, the teachers, and the students, they are offering $100 off all e-bike purchases for those folks, the active and ex-military. They've got dedicated U.S.-based customer support 7 days a week to answer questions or concerns. But the best part, if you text the word Jim, J-I-M, that's my name, to 64,000, that's 64000, then you can get a free accessory with the purchase of a bike up to $100 in value and free shipping to the lower 48 states. And you want to save the shipping because, after all, this is a bike and it costs $1 or $2 to ship. So you don't want to pay that. Free shipping, $100 free gift up to $100 in value once you purchase a bike all you got to do is text Jim to 64,000 for one of these rad power bikes. Radford should have ridden to the ring on a rad power bike.
All right.
Anyway, so what am I hearing about this eye for an eye match? Tell me I'm not hearing what I think I'm hearing.
I've only seen a little bit about it. I think you're hearing exactly what you're hearing. There will be a match, I'm assuming one of these cinematic matches. Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Seth Rollins. Eye for an eye. You have to pull your opponent's eyeball out of their skull in order to win.
Okay, this is legitimately being advertised as the way to win the match is to legitimately, they're trying to purport to the people that one of these gentlemen is going to legitimately pull the other one's eyeball out of their fucking head. Is what you're saying to me.
That's from what I've read. I mean,
there's no loophole here. It's not just a fancy tagline.
I haven't watched any of the programs building up this match. I mean, the last time we watched any of these shows, I don't remember there being a blood feud between Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins, so this seems to kind of pop up out of nowhere.
They know that. I read a little bit. I know enough to know they did some kind of fucking angle, and I think Mysterio's son was involved somehow. But something, they went for somebody's eye. But they're, please tell me, look up on the internet now. Certainly they've got advertising material out for this contest. They are not trying to legitimately say to the public at large that one of these fuckers is going to pull the other one's eyeball out. That's the way you win the match. Even Bill Watts would not have presented that match in that way. I'm dumbfounded to try to figure out what the fuck that they're thinking.
Here's the official copy from WWE.com. Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins, eye for an eye match. The Horror Show at Extreme Rules added a new level of terror as Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins will meet in an eye for an eye match. Mysterio teamed with Kevin Owens to defeat Rollins and Murphy for the right to choose the gory stipulation where a winner can only, I think they left out a word here, a winner can only be determined by extracting the opponent's eye. The Monday Night Messiah has tormented the legendary luchador for months and nearly ended Mysterio's career with a gruesome attack on his eye. With his career in jeopardy, the iconic superstar watched as his son Dominic got involved to defend his father's honor. But Dominic found himself in Rollins' sight as well. With Rollins attempting to replicate the same brutal ocular assault on Dominic, Mysterio promised to get an eye for an eye from the devious superstar. Can Mysterio achieve the ruthless justice he craves? Or will Rollins finish the barbaric attack that set this match in motion? Don't miss The Horror Show at Extreme Rules, streaming on the award-winning WWE Network, Sunday, July 19th at 7 p.m. And I guess we know the next pay-per-view we need to watch.
Oh, for fuck's sake. No, but so what's going to happen after this match when both these guys still have both their eyes? Or has one of them agreed, okay, I got two, so you can take the left one. I'm right-eyed anyway. How are they... Even if they try to do some fucking cinematic special effect, then the loser of the match is going to cover up one of his eyes forever. From now on. Every time he's on television, every time he wrestles, ever.
They're not saying the eyeball has to be detached from the skull, just popped out of the skull. Vader has his eye popped out.
Why, who thought that was a good idea? How the fuck? If I had gone up to Vince McMahon in 1997 and said, "Hey Vince, how about this?" He would have drug tested me. He would have fucking laughed at me. He would have said, "How can we promise that, pal?" That's fucking ignorant. It's stupid. It once again makes, no matter how good these guys are, whether Mysterio's over or Seth Rollins, great worker, whatever the fuck, it makes all of their efforts meaningless if the people are laughing and giggling about something going into big horror. The horror of it. Nobody believes that either one of these motherfuckers are going to pull the other one's eyeball out. And I don't think you're going to do anything to change anybody's mind between now and July 19th. So, if you can market it as going to be a great wrestling match, and who knows what's going to happen, and maybe somebody might get in, the bad neck or whatever the fuck, that's one thing. But, oh yeah, we're going to have a match, and, like all the other phony matches that we have that are obviously phony in this company that nobody tries to make fucking even look halfway legitimate. But this match over here, these guys somebody's going to pull somebody's eyeball out. Fuck you. It just fucking, is this now just a kid show? Is this Lidsville? Is this fucking Sid and Marty Krofft have bought the WWF? And now we've got fucking HR Puff and stuff instead of Stone Cold Steve Austin. What the fuck is going on here? See, here's the thing. How stupid does this have to get?
Was it Friday the 13th 3D where the guy had his eye pop out and it shot towards the camera?
I never did that 3D bullshit anyway because those glasses bothered me.
Oh.
So I don't care.
Well, the movie is aired in standard definition on television for the last 35 years.
Hey, after the first Friday the fucking 13th, they're all the goddamn same.
No, that's not true.
Ah.
The first one's not even the best one.
An eye for an eye. They could get Terry Funk to come out and be special referee.
Do you think Seth Rollins will be able to wrestle with an eye patch? Do you think he can market the eye patch?
No, I think they're just going to fuck the people. And nobody's going to lose their eye. They're either going to have a non-finish where nobody loses an eye, or they're going to try to purport to people that somebody did lose an eye, but it's going to be obviously phony, and they're still going to have an eye the next time they see them, and it's all going to be goddamn gaga, which is why I scoff laugh at fucking wrestling.
Do you think it's a missed opportunity billing it as an eye for an eye instead of ocular assault?
At least that would have done some good because it would have sent a lot of people to the dictionary or to Google to look up ocular. They've gone off the deep end, and I think Vince has an even more invincible, no pun intended, viewpoint now on his company because I'm sure somebody has showed him some of the things AEW is doing, and we'll get to that here in a second, and I'm sure he's laughed at them. And I'm sure now that he thinks, well, we can just do these mini movie things and blah, 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 and all this other cutting edge new wrestling stuff and pull out eyes and everything. And who gives a shit? Because nobody's going to touch him. Because nobody's going to fucking touch him.
Have you seen what else is on this show?
No, I have not, as a matter of fact.
I'm just looking now that I'm on their website.
Give me the big card.
Well, here's one of the matches. Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt in a Wyatt swamp fight. The horror show at WWE Extreme Rules will become even more terrifying when Universal Champion Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt meet in a non-title Wyatt swamp fight. I think going non-title there was probably a good move. Wyatt ended his harrowing silence by resurrecting from the dead. What the hell is this? By resurrecting the dead from the Firefly Funhouse and shocked the Universal Champion. After a week of soul searching, Strowman responded adamantly and promised to drag Wyatt into the swamp to let the alligators finish the job.
What the fuck? Who is this?
As Wyatt's maniacal
wait a minute, is this the fucking 4th grade book club?
As I'm determined to read this now because I like this. Right. As Wyatt's maniacal laugh echoed through the WWE Performance Center, Strowman knew the die had been cast for the Wyatt swamp fight. The monster among men, bested his old family member with black sheep mind games at WWE Money in the Bank. Will Strowman once again dig into his inner darkness, or is Wyatt laying a devastating trap for his rival? So we have an eye for an eye as well as the Wyatt swamp fight. What are your thoughts on this match?
I just was hoping they'd go for a tooth. Maybe the winner of this match has to extract a front tooth. Hat on a hat, gimmick on a gimmick. Are they they're gimmicking the whole show up with this? These two are having a fight in a swamp. The other two are going to fucking pull each other's eyeball out.
Well, it looks like the rest of the card may be a normal or traditional, maybe I should say, wrestling show.
Oh, well, how boring.
Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Championship.
Oh, let's go ahead and talk about that.
Okay.
Poor old Heath Slater. I watched the clip of Heath Slater's promo on Raw because everybody said, wow, it was so good. You said it, wow, it was so good. I watched it and I thought, wow, it was so good. But I also thought, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. I'm going to explain to you what I saw happening in front of my eyes, and you tell me if I just took it wrong or if that's what I was seeing. Okay?
Fair enough.
All right. Now, I didn't see the first part of the setup of the thing. We just saw when Heath Slater came out, but I'm assuming that Dolph Ziggler, in preparation for this big match, was bringing people out that had testimony to give to indicate that Drew McIntyre was really a fucking prick. That's basically the gist of it, right?
I don't know. I only saw the part with Heath Slater. I don't know if anyone else was brought out to give a testimonial.
Well, I think at the first he said, there's somebody else that has some shit to say about you. but point is, Dolph Ziggler, the heel, is preparing to fight the big babyface, the Superman they've been trying that beat Brock Lesnar, that they put the title on, Drew McIntyre. Looks good, fucking talks good, works good, right? They're trying to make a new top guy. So Dolph Ziggler brings out a guy that used to be partners and friends with Drew McIntyre, Heath Slater. And Heath Slater proceeds to go out there, and instead of doing this fucking soap opera contrived bullshit type promo, reciting it from memory, that you can obviously tell somebody's told him to say this, Heath Slater goes out there and does a promo that I believed he meant every word of, where he talked about how when Drew McIntyre, they had been friends for years and gone back so long and they knew each other's families and children and blah, blah, blah. And he's got tears in his eyes when he said, when Drew McIntyre, when you were fired one time, I was the first one to call you and I stayed in touch with you and I did this and my kids and they loved you and love was in the air. And we've always been friends. And then you become a big star and then you say, boy, I'm going to make sure you get a match. And what do I get? I get fired. And what did you do about with all your pull as a big star around here? Instead of getting a match with me being able to challenge a champion, I get fucking canned and I'm gone. He made me believe, and the babyface is standing there taking this fucking tongue lashing, this browbeating, and with a sheepish look on his face and his head kind of ducked down like, yeah, that's about the size of it. No rebuttal, no fucking denial, no, hey, wait, you got me all wrong. And then fucking Heath Slater challenges the fucking big star champion to a fucking fight and rips his shirt off. I'm wanting to see Heath Slater kick this fucking guy's ass. I'm convinced Drew McIntyre's a fucking asshole. And then the fight starts that Heath Slater has challenged his friend to, that his friend reluctantly accepted without ever really fucking saying, no, you got it all wrong. And Heath Slater gets a couple of shots in and Drew McIntyre kicks him out of his fucking shoes with that big kick. Boom, 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, what? Did this guy just turn heel? Why the fuck am I supposed to cheer for this guy who just basically stood there and let an old friend of his tell him what a piece of shit he was, didn't really disagree with it. And then when I'm ready to see Heath Slater, this big baby face, score a fucking Hail Mary victory and they might have made a new star out of Heath Slater. No, he's actually really fired and this is the last time we're ever going to see him. So the baby face just beats the fucking heel flat 1, 2, 3. And people are thinking, well, that fucking prick. Is that what I saw?
I believe so. The only other thing I could say is I saw photos, I didn't see it in the video that you and I both watched, post-match of Drew McIntyre standing next to Heath Slater, lifting his arms up. I guess saying, good try, but goodbye. I don't know.
Oh, for God's sake. So everything that's fake has to be fake. Everything that's real has to be made into something fake. And everything, the feeling that people get, even when it's accidentally that they get a feeling about something, has to be nullified because at the end, the shit still can't make any sense. Is that what we're saying here?
I think that's what you're saying, yes.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad we got that cleared up.
Great promo, though, by Heath Slater.
Great promo.
We've seen him as nothing but a silly character in WWE for years, and he had this inside of him the whole time. And they decided just to keep using him as a silly character. And then he does this. It's amazing.
But he's done. Well, and he's done. And he's gone. And thank you for coming. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at or hearing or listening to or seeing with any of this shit. As a matter of fact, so we get into all of the Wednesday Night War. Let's go ahead. Tell us what you're doing this week. And we're going to bring Uncle Al in for some statistics.
This week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, get information about all the shows on Twitter, at Superpodcast, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard, the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast with Mike Sempervive and Roman Gomez at midatlanticpod.com, are available wherever you find your favorite podcast. They are reviewing week by week 1982 Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, which you can watch along with on the WWE Network. Right now, they're in the midst of what's becoming a Jack Briscoe-Roddy Piper feud. Check it out today, the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast. Also want to make mention of something I briefly brought up earlier, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now, available at pwspod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We are in April of 1990 reviewing the original broadcast of John's radio show, playing clips, and on this week's show, Sergeant Slaughter. But really the main event is Big John Studd. Calls in, takes callers, talks about wrestling, talks about why he's not in the WWE anymore, or WWF at the time. Really interesting stuff, and my big takeaway from listening to it, and I always heard this from other people, I don't know if you were ever really around John Studd much, but he sounded like the nicest guy in the entire world. He sounded like just a terribly nice guy.
Yet I think I may have been in the same place as him like twice in my life, but he did seem to be a nice, gentle giant.
So there's that, plus a recap of the bus trip to the NWA at the Meadowlands show. What happens when a couple of people who are on the bus trip disappear and it's time to go home? Find out for that and so much more. pwspod.com. Once again, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now. Of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership!
You shall rue this day. But go on, start ruing!
I swear this episode will be coming out soon. Every free chance I get, I'm editing it.
Yeah, I tell the people I'm going to send their collectibles and merchandise too.
You will hear this show before your international order arrives. That, I promise you. But go through the archive today, as so many of you are, and thank you once again. Record numbers going through the archives. 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. The Mothership.
So of all of those fine programs, Brian, that you're involved in on a regular basis, I won't say weekly, that hems you in on the Mothership to some of these schedules, but
that's right.
The newest one is one that's fascinating and one that covers wrestling from a completely different perspective, and the territory days of wrestling and all over the country, and it's called Charting the Territories. And you tipped me off that you were going to be doing this, and I've thought the research is fascinating. The star of the show is Al Getz, and the manner in which he's been going about the research and enumerating this thing, finally you're bringing it to podcast form. Is that correct, Brian?
That is correct. He has been doing this research for a while on his website, chartingtheterritories.com, where he has all the stats, all the analytics, all the results, write-ups explaining what was happening at the specific time that he's analyzing. And what we thought was there should be an audio component to this. It's just a natural fit. And Al, along with John Boucher, and we all know John, he's a historian, he's a collector, he knows his stuff. have put together this project with me, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy about it, and it debuts today as you're listening to this. If you're listening to this on Friday when this debuts, Charting the Territories, the podcast, debuts at chartingthepodcast.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just look for Charting the Territories by the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and we're terribly excited about this.
So now I got competition on Fridays, is what you're saying. I got to look out. I got to look over my shoulder. They're coming up on me on Friday's going to be a big double header. That's the way we're going to market it. But anyway, we thought it'd be a good idea to for kicking the show off to have the man himself on the program here, Al Getz, that's been responsible for the research, the results, some of the analytics, as you say. Boy, imagine if Al Getz had been the sports analytics guy instead of Tony Khan with $1 billion. What might have happened? But anyway, nevertheless, we're going to get Al on the phone here shortly. Is that correct? Or like right about now, any old time?
I believe he is on the line right now.
Al, are you there?
I'm here, Jim.
My God, that was a process. Congratulations on the new program. And I guess for people who may not know your background in wrestling, you've managed a lot. You managed to actually for Dennis Corluzzo. Well, tell the folks a little bit about your involvement in wrestling first.
Sure. I worked as a manager on the independents from the mid-'90s through the 2000s. As a matter of fact, the last time I saw you, Jim, you were beating my face into a pulp on the floor of the gymnasium in Carrollton, Georgia. But it was all a ruse because in the ring, my man Sal Renaro was actually beating your man. So I took one for the team.
Yeah, and I remember it was enjoyable to pummel your face into a bloody pulp.
If I had a nickel for everyone who agreed with that statement, I'd have many, many nickels.
But nevertheless, but now that you have grown out of your childish ways, and we like me, we've all grown up and got out of the wrestling business, you're still fascinated by it. And you started compiling these results. And I mean, this actually was research where you were going around different places around the country before the pandemic hit, right?
Correct. For about a year and a half, I was traveling mostly through the former Watts and McGurk areas. So Oklahoma, Louisiana, parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, etc., to fill in the blanks on a lot of house show results that are not part of the collective, that are not in the historical websites and books as of yet, and actually use your book to fill in a lot of blanks for 1984, because you had a lot of listings for shows from your records where the only thing we knew was the Midnight Express match, but I was able to use those dates to go to that newspaper and find the ads for the entire show.
Well, yeah, that's what I've been influencing a lot of the modern day researchers, because at least on some of those spot shows, Laranja, Louisiana, or, Hope, Arkansas at the Watermelon Festival or whatever, there was no real way to determine where those spot shows took place or when, because there was no rhyme or reason. You could look in the Baton Rouge newspapers or New Orleans or Oak City or all the major towns, and you knew every couple of weeks you're going to see an ad for a show, but the spot shows were just everywhere. So at least when you know that we were in Bunkie, Louisiana on such and such date, you can go, if there is indeed a newspaper in Bunkie, or was at that time, you can go to it and say, well, there's the card. And sometimes even the results. So it's just record keeping in wrestling, even by the boys and the companies, was so haphazard or non-existent that now the people who are really trying to get a grip on how business was in the territories, you got to go and you got to do the research. The only method of advertising that has lived on, the posters have all been pulled down, the tapes have been erased, but you got the newspapers.
Correct. And in addition to going to libraries, there are a few subscription sites online that actually have searchable indexes for many newspapers. So you can type in Danny Hodge, Jack Briscoe, so on and so forth, and see what comes up. Of course, if you look for Jerry Brown or Joe McCarthy, you get a lot of false positives. And there's someone named Terry Taylor.
I bet Governor Jerry Brown has had a few false positives in his time, but nevertheless, I digress. Yeah, that's the thing is, you have to, and once again, there's wrestling material, as I found from research on my Louisville book and stuff that John Cosper tipped me to, that you can find some things in the strangest places, with the Police used to do a police benefit show here once a year. And that was generally the biggest wrestling event of the year in the 50s. But if you wouldn't get it by typing in wrestling, you'd type in police or whatever. Nevertheless, the thing now that you have tracked a lot of these results down, and you've got runs for JYD in 1980, the year of the blinding angle, and you've got, as you said, the Midnight and Magnum TA and a bunch of us in 84 Mid-South. You've even got Dusty Rhodes in 1971 when he was a single heel in the McGurk territory and working with guys like Sputnik Monroe, which I would wish I could have seen those matches. But then you have, and you got to be the one to explain this to me, you've assigned a ways to quantify how the guys were used and how important a rivalry or a feud was, or a guy's run in the main events, by quantifying a variety of things. And that is henceforth the title. Imagine this, charting the territories. You're making a chart. We got a lot of big marks, so I know it's good. I know it must be really valid because we got high marks. But how have you come up with this? Explain this to me, Ricky.
Well, the idea was, and if you're like me, the first thing I looked at when I bought the Apter mags back in the 80s was the ratings. They had the top 10 ratings for each territory. And those were not official. And as I looked at them, I always wondered how they came up with them. And the answer is simple. The guys ranked at the top were either the local champions or were the guys that were frequently in the main events. After the first few spots, the next guys were a little bit lower on the card, and so on and so forth. And I basically invented a way out of thin air to take a wrestling card, which in the days of the territories, there was a very specific order. It wasn't like nowadays where they have hot matches to open the show and then they have peaks and valleys. Back then,
back in those days, sometimes guys would walk out if they fucking showed up and saw they were jerking the curtain.
Yeah, but the guys that were early in the card, they had a role and they were all generally full-time professional wrestlers. They served a purpose, but the main events were where the promotion made their money. And if we assume that a promoter liked money and wanted to make as much of it as possible, then he was going to put the guys most capable of selling tickets in those main event spots, which are prominently featured in advertisements. So I basically found a way to turn that into a number. If someone's in the main event of a given show, they get a 1. Based on the number of matches, each succeeding match gets a lower number, and the opening match gets the lowest number. It would be a decimal less than 1. If there's 5 matches, for example, the semi-main event gets 4 out of 5. It's the 4th match out of 5, so it gets a 0.8, and so on all the way down, where the opening match, the first match out of 5 matches, gets a 0.2. And then I average all those up for a period of time, and you basically come up with a wrestler's average position or spot on the cards. And I've named this statistic statistical position over time. So it's SPOT, a spot rating, because it measures a wrestler's spot.
Spot. I see what you did there. And then the only thing is you would have a minus 0.2 if it was Tommy Fierro and Dennis Corlew in a boxing match. But anyway, I digress.
The Rick Ratchet and Overweight Lover matches had negative ratings in every possible form.
The Purple Bomber was a big guy. But anyway, so the spot rating calculates the rating of the wrestler's spot, and I can just see because I have some of the research here on Magnum TA, and his spot rating peaked from December 19th of 1983 to June 17th of 1984 was during the time where he had his run with the Mid-South Tag Team title with Wrestling 2, and then worked the series of matches with the Midnight Express where they dropped the belts to us, and then 2 switched heel on him, and etc. And that spot rating, Magnum's spot rating, hit a peak of 0.92 in February. So assuming that 100 would be perfect, he was as pretty main event of a guy as you could get during that point in time in the territory.
That is correct. And most territories at any given point in time has a few baby faces and a few heels that sort of rotate in and out of the main events based on what the big angle was that was shot on that week's TV. And just there was a rotation of talent. Very rarely do you see a Bruno or a peak Lawler or a peak Dusty where it's one guy always in the main. So anytime I see someone with a .90 or above as Magnum hit at this point, that indicates they're almost always in the main events and are clearly positioned very high on the cards because, in theory, they are putting asses in the seats.
Well, there you go. And then by the same token, the Feud Score. Explain the Feud Score to us. FEUD.
Yes, and again, I came up with a very witty acronym. It stands for Frequent Encounters Using Data. And so it's a feud score, and it's based on the number of times a match happens and what I call the breadth of, or how spread out that match happens. If it's just happening a few times in a couple of towns on the loop, it gets a low score. If it's happening around the horn, it might get a higher score. And if it's got rematches week in and week out in different towns every night of the week, then it's going to get a very high score. And in this case, since we don't have complete data, the numbers, we don't know all the information, but we can see which matches were happening more often at a given time in a given territory. And as you said, in the case of Magnum, he had that big feud, him and Two against the Midnights, which segued into a feud between Magnum and Wrestling 2.
Well, and also the Midnights, Magnum, and Wrestling 2 had a peak feud score of 98 in mid-February. Because we were wrestling them every night of the week on every show practically, and almost all of them were main event matches. So that's that was pretty much what that is. But now what I thought was interesting, and potentially they call it the exception that makes the rule, the Last Stampede series, because there's always something odd. And this is why Roughhouse Fargo, Jerry Jarrett always said, was the guy who drew more money per capita than anybody ever in the history of Memphis wrestling, including Jerry Lawler, because he was like the groundhog at Groundhog Day. He only popped his head up once a year or so, but everybody paid attention when he did. Even though our feud with Bill Watts and Stagger Lee, Junkyard Dog, set the record in all the towns and was pretty much the catalyst of the biggest business they did, we only had 14 of them. There was no rematches. It wasn't a long program or a major money drawing angle in that sense. It was one night each place. And so that worked against us because we only got a 52 on the feud score, Al.
I know. Well, it's one of those things in the 80s, in the supercard era, and in the era of significant changes to television distribution, it sort of changed, and Watts stopped running many of his towns weekly. And so this statistic, since it's a cumulative type of statistic, does well when territories are running most of their towns weekly. And as we get into the 80s, that changed as Watts went from running split crews during the week to running one show most nights during the week, sometimes with a smaller spot town. And then he ran multiple shows on weekends, either with split crews or just AM and PM shows. So it's sort of a change.
And good luck, by the way, finding the results for the Buttermilk Run shows, those B shows in fucking Crossett, Arkansas somewhere on the same night as New Orleans Run. And I'm sure the guys were happy to be there. But no, but that is the thing. There's always, like I said, the exception of the rule. And in that case, it was a major star coming out of retirement one time, which was the impetus to draw the huge house. And if it had been brought back, it would have been subject to the law of diminishing returns. So you can sometimes make more money with a short program than you can with a long one. But anyway, the point is, you have charted this stuff out to where you see, the number of weeks and times that guys worked with each other, the angles, and then what really makes a difference is because there are always these exceptions like a Watts thing, but when you can go over a year and a half or 2 years of a territory and see a top guy or team how they fared and what they did, then you can really tell who was drawing a lot of money in at that time period in that territory.
Correct. And there are instances where guys were brought in and they thought they were going to become big stars and they gave them a push. And then very quickly you see them being de-pushed or leaving. And Ron Pope would be a prime example of that. And that's not, again, it's, I'm not knocking the guy.
No, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. Not everybody might not know that we're talking about. That is the real name, the professional name of the magnificent Zulu, who we've held up here on the program and some cases in the past is a perfect example of a guy with $1 million body and a 10-cent brain that could sell you out the first time and you'd never want to see him again.
Right. But they always gave him that opportunity because the first time out he would sell out.
Yeah.
So you can see who lasts, who has staying power.
And he got credit for 2 in Memphis because he was underneath the first 2 reunions of all 3 Fabulous Fargos for the first time in 15 years. And then there was Zulu on top with the Stomper for the Southern title, and he'd get credit with 2 straight sellouts in Memphis.
Yeah, that's the thing is that any wrestler that's given a shot, if they're given more than one shot, chances are it's because they drew. And we know a lot of the largest box office draws in wrestling history, but there's just so little in the way of attendance numbers for your run-of-the-mill weekly towns over the years that the best way to see who had staying power is to look at these statistics and say, okay, Bob Sweetan had a year-long run here. He must have been drawing, or he must have had, evidence on somebody.
I've always said that if records did exist, not just the results of the matches, but the attendance records, the financial records that the promoters had, the box office statements, from the 50s and 60s, from the Southern territories, especially the Tennessee territory, when you think that Nick Goulas was running a town like Chattanooga literally weekly for 30 years, and that in some cases they do runs where they would sell out several weeks in a row in a 5,000 plus seat building. I think Chattanooga's record ended up being 6,400 people when they jammed them into the old auditorium there. But a regular house was 3,000 or 4,000 people for a lot of that period of time. And when business would be on its ass, it was a couple thousand people a week, every once in a while. If you were able to find those statistics and add those all up, I guarantee you a guy like Jackie Fargo sold more individual tickets, probably at cheaper prices in smaller buildings, than for some periods of the 50s and 60s than a guy like Vern Gagne, just because of the repetition and the sheer numbers of, yes, Vern Gagne is working huge Midwestern cities, Chicago, Minneapolis, etc., on a limited schedule that he dictated himself. And even when the AWA ran 15 times a month, he didn't work 15 times a month. And meanwhile, Jackie Fargo's drawing fucking 20,000 people a week between Nashville, Chattanooga, Birmingham, and Memphis. So these things are all very wrestling nerdy and interesting.
Yeah, there's so much data that we don't have. And what the idea is what I did. I used the thing we have the most of, and that is the lineups as they're advertised. We might not have results for all of these shows, but there is information that can be gleaned from the advertisement. And so we have more of that than anything else. I've got between 1959 and 1986 for the McGurk/Watts territory, I've got about 14,700 shows, and I'm probably only about 2/3 complete. I'm probably missing another 7,000 of the CrossFit Arkansas of the world.
Wow. And sometimes when we were in CrossFit, we wished that we could somehow erase CrossFit from history, world history, but I think you got to keep plugging. And but the modern wrestling fan, if they had any idea, you just kind of gave a little bit, but if they had any idea how many live pro wrestling events were run in the United States on a weekly, a monthly, and an annual basis for years and years and years, their brains would explode. Would they think that this is a big renaissance? I hate to bring us back to modern day reality, but this is the big renaissance in wrestling. All these shows. Oh my gosh, it's never been it's a boom period. Oh God. Something like this shows you that you had, well, just do the math. When you had 24 territories at any given time, sometimes more, sometimes a few fewer, running 6 and 7 nights a week, 52 weeks a year in this country for fucking 50 years. Do the math.
Many of them were running more than one show a night.
Yeah.
Freaking Poffo. Angelo Poffo was running 2 shows a night a lot of the times.
Well, yeah, and see, you didn't have to be a big promotion to run 2 shows, because sometimes if you were a small territory, but you found 2 spot shows where you could draw 500 people per show if you sent 8 wrestlers and a referee, that's what you did. And everybody had 16 wrestlers somehow. So that could be, but at the same time, you had a territory like the Carolinas, Crockett Promotions, where they would run 2 and 3 towns a night, and literally their Christmas tradition, you would have Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, and Atlanta all running on Christmas, and in Thanksgiving they used to do Greensboro and the Norfolk Scope, I think, the same night, Thanksgiving night, because they had so much talent and territory. So there were a lot of live wrestling events and a lot of tickets sold, and now we got to go back and try to put it together, right?
Yeah, the idea is to come up with what I often refer to as a stat line, like the back of a baseball card. It lists batting average, home runs, and some other key stats. The idea is to create a stat line because the only thing we know about is the top guys. We know how many times Bruno sold out the Garden. We know how many times Lawler and Dundee worked each other in Memphis. But for a Randy Colley, we know, all right, he had a couple of big runs as one of the Moondogs and a big run in Mid-South as the Nightmare. But he was a full-time wrestler for about 20 years, and he deserves to have some sort of a number that we can put to that. Say, this is what he did, over the course of his career.
Well, and sometimes some of these guys deserve to have a number put to them. Like, in the case of Bob Sweetan, maybe 3 to 5 or 7 to 10 would be. But anyway.
Hey, if I could jump in real quick, obviously all the stats and all the data you guys are talking about is available right now at chartingtheterritories.com. But Al, if I could ask you, because you have it in front of you, the Midnight Express, when people think of 1984 Mid-South, they may go right to the Last Stampede. We discussed why that wasn't their peak in terms of their spot score or their feud score. What was the peak of the Midnight Express in 1984?
As far as for their spot rating, it would be, hold on one second, I have to check 2 charts. It would have been around the time of the Last Stampede, because while the Last Stampede didn't happen that often, it happened, I think, 14, 15 times. It was absolutely the main event on all of those shows. So their spot rating peaks the week of April 25th with a 0.96. And that's when they are feuding with, they have the Last Stampede on the big shows. And the rest of that week, they're likely working the Rock and Roll Express in the other towns. And those are often in the main event, or at the very least, second from the top.
You are correct, sir.
And what about the feud score?
The feud score, 98 was the peak for the Magnum and 2 feud. And as far as the Rock and Roll, the highest individual score was a lot less than that. It looks like it was in the 60s. But the other thing to note is that feud lasted longer. In fact, it had almost 2 separate iterations. They had the feud, and then the Midnights won the Loser Leave Town match, and then the Midnights went into their feud with the Fantastics. The Rock and Roll came back, and they had another run that built to the scaffold matches that finished up the Midnights. So the number of weeks that they had a significant feud score against the Rock and Roll was more than against Magnum and 2, or more than the Midnights. But as far as looking at a single week and seeing which opponents they're wrestling virtually every night, as Jim said earlier, it was against Magnum and Wrestling 2.
Well, and also in that time period, with the Rock and Roll, the reason why that we did not wrestle them in straight tag matches every single night for the first run is because they did want to stretch things out a bit. And that's why we had a run with them. And then we beat them. They lost the loser leave town. They went back to Memphis for 3 months. The Fantastics came in. We actually wrestled them much more often than we wrestled the Rock and Roll every night on almost every show, because primarily that was to keep us warm. We were going to win that program in the end. Even though we put them over plenty and DQs and et cetera, we came out on top of the Fantastics, just like we'd come out on top of the program with the Rock and Roll, which almost never happened in a high-profile deal with the heel coming out on top in those days, because then the Rock and Roll came back for the second round, and then in that blow-off, they won. They beat us in the scaffold matches. We left the territory, and they stayed. So it was about stretching it out for the whole year, and even giving the people a false finish to the program in the middle of it, where they thought, we got rid of the Rock and Roll and, fuck it, we're on to other things. So that was kind of unique as well.
And that's why I came up with the idea of also doing a podcast, because we can look at these numbers, but a lot of times when the numbers, don't match up with what we thought, there's a reason why. And we've explained why the Bill Watts Stagger Lee feud didn't have a high feud score. We've explained why the Rock and Roll Express feud stretched out so long. There's always context to it. You can't just look at the numbers. You have to provide a background. And so that's when I recruited noted wrestling historian John Boucher to join me. And he's got some great stories. And as a matter of fact, not only is he a noted wrestling historian, but he has such a fabulous collection. It should be known as the collection, the Cirque de Boucher. Cirque de Boucher. He's got a membership to the Red McKim fan club. Red McKim was a wrestler from McGurk that I don't think he ever ventured outside the territory except maybe once or twice, but he was worked for the Tulsa Fire Department and wrestled on a regular basis for many years, then a part-time basis for many years. But we have a great story about how Ted Lewin's sister snuck out of the house to watch her brother wrestle. Her brother got his nose broken by his opponent, and a couple of weeks later, said opponent shows up at the family house for dinner and ends up marrying this young lady. Is that, by the way, is that a story for the first program?
That is, yes, that is.
Okay,
there's your cliffhanger, because I don't know who the fuck this is either.
Yes, you do.
When Sally met blank, and it's a story of a dangerous liaison, and there might be a hint in there.
Oh shit! Okay, all right. Well, now I figured it out. I'm like, wait a minute, I've never heard this story from this angle before.
A man who allegedly he's one of the people accused of inventing the blade.
Well, yeah, now I've got it, but it took me a while to go around the elbow to get to the wrist. I'd never heard the coming to dinner story, but anyway. All right, well, tell them again, Brian and/or Al, where they can hear these fine dissertations, discussions, and dissections of the territories.
Once again, the podcast is available wherever you find your favorite podcasts: Apple, Podcast Addict, Spotify. Look for Charting the Territories, and it should be there. You can also access it directly, including the RSS feed, at chartingthepodcast.com, and get access to all of this information, all this data, all the analytics, all the research, and it's really deep research. It also talks about what the programs and feuds were. Who was using the hair cream in 1980 in Mid-South Wrestling? How did it end up in JYD's eyes? Who brought it to Mid-South Wrestling? You never hear that fact talked about too often.
It was the guy that didn't need any fucking hair cream by the time he booked Dallas, but that's another story.
Well, you can get that information at chartingtheterritories.com. And like I said before, really excited to have this on the network.
And I'm sure that Al is happy to be on your fine network, Mr. Last, and this outlaw show as well that we do over here over in the corner. But Al, thank you for coming, and thank you for attempting to explain to a statistical layman like me. But it's basically what it's going to do is provoke a lot of conversation about who was doing what in the territories. And since we have nothing worthy of talking about in the way of wrestling these days, at least that's a refreshing change. Thank you, Al. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being had. And Brian, what the heck are we going to do now?
Well, Jim, I think we've done as much as we can on this show to avoid the reviews, but I think we actually have to deliver now and do this.
All right. Well, as we said last week, part one of the Wednesday Night Wars, and we revealed the statistics that apparently a couple 100,000 people have quit watching AEW since we quit watching it, because I was so disgusted by it, because the only reason they were watching it is so I could point out to them what not to do when you're trying to book a national wrestling promotion. And they weren't having any fun watching the show without hearing me talk about what was wrong with it, because they can see with their own eyes it's bad, but they like the background on exactly why it's bad. That's what we were hearing. So it was, all right, we'll try the Wednesday Night War. And last week was a draw. I'm not talking about in terms of ratings. I'm talking about neither show was particularly anything to write home about. There was a few good things, a lot of bad things. So I wanted to see how part two would shake out. As far as whether somebody's going to clearly win this thing, whether the Great American Bash was going to be greater than Fyter Fest. And it was a war of attrition with everybody doing everything they could, much like the South Park Little League team, to lose this fucking thing. I mean, I've never seen two promotions try any harder head to head to have a rottener show than these two did on this particular night. I'm not going to tell who I give the edge to yet, but it'll probably become obvious as we go along. But holy fuck, I have to do this way. I understand now why all these people said, if we ain't going to watch it if you don't, because it's no fun otherwise. I have to just assume that they're all yanking our fucking chain, and that nobody really, with a few exceptions, is serious in any way about this. That's the only way I can look at it. Let's start with NXT, shall we?
Let's do that.
So, wasn't it in one of the women? They had a women's four-way. Am I dreaming this? Last week, didn't we watch a women's four-way involving Mia Yim and Candice LeRae with two other women?
This is how sad things are. We always say, I can't remember what we saw. I believe so. That sounds correct.
Okay.
I just can't remember anything that happened in the match.
Because remember, I said I like Mia Yim, but I hate these four ways, and it's even worse when the girls try to do them. So on the Great American Bash, they're so short-handed that on this super card, they had to bring a match back out of the fucking girls match from last week. And remember, I even said I'd love to see a singles match between any of these girls, because then it might actually make sense, but the four-way is just caca, right? So they give us a single match between any two of these girls and make it a fucking hardcore street fight. So you can't tell anything anyway. Mia Yim comes out before she gets in the ring, before the bell rings. She has taken every piece of the Home Depot out from under the ring and thrown it in the ring. I said I wanted to see any two of the girls in the four-way in a regular singles match so that I could actually see whether they can work or not. And with, as I said, with Mia Yim, I know I like her stuff. But they give us a garbage match that any untrained dipshit can fucking do that doesn't tell you anything and devalues the idea of gimmick shots to begin with stop signs and chairs and garbage cans and fucking tables and shit. It devalues the idea of gimmick shots when the guys do it in main events and grudge matches to draw money, when you got girls doing it. And I'm sorry, if that's sexist, fuck you. 125-pound women bashing each other with chairs, falling through tables, taking bumps onto concrete for 20 fucking minutes. All that does is show everybody it's fucking phony. And what are the guys supposed to sell? Are the guys supposed to be run over by a fucking Volkswagen Beetle before they can take a bump, because this is not hurting any of the girls? I watched it. It was 90s ECW bullshit at the start. Then I skip ahead 5 minutes and they're at the back of the arena next to the catering table. NXT doesn't have the catering that Raw and SmackDown do. They're doing the Tupelo concession stand brawl, but with no blood, no excitement, nothing looking real, and no way to draw any money off of it. So then I skipped way ahead and they got back in the ring finally. And they continue to do shit that's ridiculous for women to do. And they shouldn't be allowed to do it whether they want to or not. They shouldn't be booked to do it. This ain't going to draw any money. And it just, as I said, makes it look like bullshit when the guys in the main events do any of this. Oh, I'm so scared to get hit by that chair. Wyatt almost put that 125-pound, 5-foot gray-haired girl down for a 2 count. And it's just girls doing shit that guys should be doing very sparingly, if at all. And there's girls doing it. Bullshit. 20 minutes of bullshit. What'd you think?
I can't add too much to that. I'm not of the opinion that girls shouldn't be doing any of these things, but I think it has to have the right time, the right place. This match wasn't doing it for me. It went on a very long time, and then it ended.
Okay, Mr. Sexually correct. You're not politically correct. You're sexually correct because it's about the different sexes. Why should if Charlotte, I keep going back to the actual legitimate athletic looking fucking women. If Charlotte and Rhea Ripley have a big fucking match like they had at WrestleMania that can draw me in as an athletic contest, and it looks like they're trying to win something, and they're selling and they're fighting and they're scratching and clawing to get the victory and they're struggling with each other and all their shit looks good and it makes sense. I can buy that. Whether it's a woman doing it, a man doing it, whatever the fuck. But when you blatantly go out and say, okay, we're going to let these girls in a middle card free TV match do everything that main event guys should do on a pay-per-view match that they had to pay for. Well, there is no such thing anymore. But in a big show, grudge match, why was there no blood? Well, there's no blood because they don't want blood on it. Well, then you shouldn't be bashing each other over the head with blunt instruments. You can't get some fucking color. And as I said, 5 foot tall, 120-pound women being bashed over and over allegedly with blunt instruments, they should be allowed to do this and just make everything look as phony as possible, is what you're saying. I'm not saying a girl should never be allowed to hit another girl over the head with a chair, but if they do, the girl that gets hit better go down and stay there. What the fuck? Does none of this have to make sense anymore?
I will say I didn't enjoy the match, but it's weird because I didn't enjoy
because you're sexually correct.
I didn't enjoy the match. I didn't like seeing them have this hardcore match, but I don't want to just label it that they should never be allowed to do this kind of thing. But I personally did not like it.
There aren't 2 girls in the world that it would be believable for them to do everything that they did in this match if it was real and survive. Sorry. Next match. Bronson Reid versus Tony Nese. I like Tony Nese. He was at one of the Ring of Honor camps years ago, like 10 years ago. Just a young kid then. He looks good. He's ripped. He's small, but he looks good. He's an athlete. Bronson Reid, I like. Could be a new Crusher Blackwell or a Bam Bam Bigelow as he gets older and more experienced. He moves around well for that fucking size. And just a note here, NXT already, it's a much more professional television production in every way than AEW. The graphics, the cameras, the audio, just the technical work, the packages, even the announcing, even though it's lifeless and scripted, as a television production, and this is not a surprise. As I've said before, the WWE, that's one thing they're on top of. They got the money, they got the budget, they can hire the best people. So it's a much more professional television program, NXT, and you don't see anything that's just insulting, just rotten. The talent, nobody looks visually like a piece of shit like they do on AEW. Nobody looks outlawed. Nothing really stupid happens. But the great moments are few and far between, too. The moments where you feel like somebody actually did something they shouldn't do or that they weren't supposed to do. A lot of that happens on AEW in a lot of cases because probably these fucking inexperienced green fucks are just figuring shit out on the fly. But NXT is cleaner. It's nicer. It's a great production. The guys are all athletes. They're highly trained. But they do the same kind of shit over and over. And while there's nothing really insulting or stupid or embarrassing, it's just kind of clean and there and nice. And you know what I'm saying? You can get the outhouse or the penthouse with AEW. You're always in a fucking pretty professional zone with NXT, but you know, the high points are still rare. But these guys worked hard. It was an exciting match. It made sense. The right finish, Bronson Reid with a big splash off the top. The fucking guy, a third of his size, didn't kick out after 2, and they did 17 more false finishes. They're professionals responsible for this program. They're in charge, you can tell. It was the perfect finish for the match. It was a nice match to get Bronson Reid over. So for that, this was very good. I could see more Bronson Reid.
I had the same thought. I'd like to see them do something with him. It seemed like it was more of a squash match than anything else, despite Tony Nese's previous accolades in the cruiserweight division, but he's got something.
And we segue to, by the way, the Mercedes Martinez package. And I wrote, I want to see more of her. I've liked her every time I've seen her. I didn't know she was going to be on the show later on. And then I realized that. Okay, well, good. But then here is Rotten Manager Stone doing another bad promo where he imitates a classic heel manager with his tongue firmly in his cheek. Some schlub comes in from off camera and knocks him down, and he's trying to sign Shotzi Blackheart, but I guess that's Shotzi's boyfriend. They're all bearded and bald and have tattoos. I don't know who the fuck's who. Shotzi's boyfriend or protector knocked Robert Stone down, and Shotzi ran over his leg with her tank, and he was laying there trying to impart to us that the tank was hurting his leg. And what the fuck? This gives managers a bad name. I don't know who this fucking guy is. I hate him already.
Well, he threw coffee backwards. I don't know if the guy has anything to do with Shotzi, but he was hit with the coffee, and that was enough for him to knock Robert Stone
okay,
down.
Yeah, whatever the fuck it was. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out why the fuck. There actually are a couple of managers out there that actually know how to be managers. Truth Martini's running a wrestling school in fucking Detroit, and this guy's on television? The fuck?
There are people that think he's doing a Tony Khan impersonation. Do you see that at all?
Well, who would want to do that? I mean, I can see they both have curly black hair and a nerdy disposition, and otherwise, this Stone is just doing a bad imitation of classic wrestling managers without knowing. He's just seen some tape and he doesn't know how the fuck to do it or why or what he's doing. But speaking of not knowing why, what the fuck, or how, the next match was Johnny Gargano versus Isaiah Swerve Scott. Johnny Gargano, the man with the monotone face. Have you ever seen anybody with any more lack of expression on their face at any given point than Johnny Gargano?
You know, ever since you first started saying that, it's all I could pay attention to when he's wrestling.
It's like the blackface referee they have, right? That tans to the point where his fucking scalp glows through his hair and it's white and his face, and you can't take your eyes off of it. Every time now I see Gargano, I keep looking at his face, and it's the same one. Anyway, I mean, I figured this match was going to be technically okay because Gargano is he's okay. But here they started off with the nice solid mat and chain wrestling, as the kids call it. And there wasn't anything phony or goofy. It's just that Gargano is so boring as a human fucking being. And he looks like a small child. if they still have WWE studios, I want to see the movie where Rhea Ripley is the babysitter for Johnny Gargano and Kip Sabian. Think about it. She's got all the personality in the world. She's a foot taller than they are. They're two unruly children. They could dress them up like when the Three Stooges played their own babies with the fucking, the curls and the... Anyways, after the chain wrestling, then they break into the gymnastics at 100 miles an hour and a dive for the break. So, that's wrestling. Swerve is a good athlete. I will say that. The fans beating on the plexiglass got old with me within seconds. I make noise, yes, but just the constant hammering on the plexiglass, whatever the fuck. Remember when they did the video of Mick Foley, the Three Faces of Foley? I think they will do Johnny Gargano, the One Face of Gargano. I'm writing things down to keep myself occupied here while they're doing shit. As a matter of fact, I will read what I wrote. They did a lot of shit to each other, but I don't think anyone told them who the heel was because I didn't see anybody cheat. It was just move versus move. Gargano gave Swerve the reverse Hurricane Rana on the floor and then just tossed him back in the ring and hit a DDT 1, 2, 3 like that wasn't enough. They did a bunch of shit. And Johnny Gargano is like a bowl of lettuce without the croutons and the dressing and the bacon bits and the cheese and the fucking radishes and the carrots. It's what it's supposed to be, but nobody gives a fuck. It's a bowl of lettuce. So there you have it. What'd you think of that?
It was all right for what it was. My problem was, with AEW, there was a lot of different things I was curious how they would be on the show. To me, with NXT, this was a one-match show. All I kept thinking was, I just want to see the main event already.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire show. And
yes,
I know Gargano's talented, and I've seen him have good matches. DIY against a Revival, him and Ciampa. I'm not as crazy about those matches as some other people are, but they've had some good matches. But I just didn't care. I just wanted to see Keith Lee versus Adam Cole already.
Well, and I guess that's the whole thing. On NXT, you're not going to see anything insulting. Nothing's going to fucking go sideways in a goddamn humorous fashion. Nobody's going to do anything really stupid. It's just going to be more of the same kind of stuff that modern wrestlers do over and over without anybody standing out, and everybody works the fucking same. Remember the next match coming up. Escobar and Wilde and Mendoza, the lucha group whose name I cannot pronounce, that they're pissed off that luchadors have been, pigeonholed as flippy guys with masks. Okay, they all look good together. They look like athletes. They wrestle Drake Maverick, Fan Dancer, and Easy Breezy, who I guess they're just trying to find something to fucking do with. Have they ever done anything with Fandango and Tyler Breeze?
No, not really. And, that's another one of those interesting cases where you talk to guys who work there, and they tell you they love working with them. They tell you how talented those guys are, and they've been used like jerk-offs for years. And I used to think Fandango, even when he had the dancing gimmick, I thought he had something because he could do some cool things in the ring. He was certainly committed to the silly gimmick he was given. But, here they are on this show, and no one cares.
Well, and I like Drake Maverick. I've met Rockstar Spud. He was an OVW boy. I met him a couple times. I wasn't here then, but I met him, and as a matter of fact, I ran into him here a year or two ago at one of the fan fests. Very nice, polite young man, but he's fucking tiny. He's minute. I know that he can talk, and I'm glad that they had a GM role for him or whatever the fuck. He's a great kid, but when you put in supposed pro wrestlers in the ring, it's just I don't even want to knock this guy. He's a nice guy, but fuck, seriously, not everybody can be the star of the fucking movie. Not everybody can be a rock star. Sometimes other people need supporting roles. I'm trying to be nice, but God damn it, can wrestlers get any fucking smaller? I tweeted the Mid-Atlantic podcast tweeted out clip of Roddy Piper and Ric Flair being interviewed by Bob Caudle. I said, my God, look, wrestlers look like grown adult men. Anyway, these guys in this six-man tag, highly trained athletes, working hard, taking big bumps, but everybody does the same kind of shit, works the same kind of way. And now they're doing double tags in NXT too. I'm going to talk about that in AEW, but they're doing double tags now, like that has ever actually been a thing. So then this whole thing started blending together, so I zipped ahead and Escobar beat Drake Maverick. And we don't even need, it's the same. It's the same. Here this just went by and you're waiting to see the fucking match everybody wants to see. Whereas on AEW, there was no match everybody wanted to see, so it was easier to fucking sit through it. Gargano and Rey did a promo back in the back and tried to have personality, bless them. They didn't succeed, but they tried real hard. Santana Garrett versus Mercedes Martinez. I love Mercedes Martinez's entrance. She looks badass. I like the way that she woman-handled Santana Garrett. She was physical. She worked different. It wasn't the same old indie girls match. She laid her shit in. She kicked ass. She had some fucking attitude. Had a badass bitch face expression. And she hit a finish and got a 3 count. This was the best girls match of the fucking night by default. It's the only one that made any fucking sense. Well, I tell a lie. Actually, this was one of 2 girls matches in the course of the night that made a lick of sense. The other one was on AEW. We'll get to that in a minute. But it can be done. They just don't do it very often. Your thoughts on our friend Mercedes?
I want to talk more about my friend Santana. But no, it was good. It was good for what it was. No problem there. It was a solid match, a solid victory for Mercedes Martinez. Not too much to add to that.
Well, and that's the thing is, hey, I know we haven't been watching religiously, but I believe we saw her debut or when she arrived when we were watching NXT before. And that ain't been that long ago. So a lot of people have forgotten how to book, not only how to book, but why it's done. When you first see a new talent, if you expect that talent to be considered by the fans as a top talent, they need to win the first several times you see them. If they cannot win in the instances that you are giving them to be on television, then don't put them in it to begin with. It's better not to see a new talent than to see a new talent lose. Then once they've got some wins and they've established, why do you think the goddamn crooked boxing promoters used to run guys' records up in out-of-town fights against tomato cans? Because nobody takes anybody seriously unless they are winners when they first see them. So anyway, I'm glad that they're putting Mercedes Martinez over strongly on television to lead to big matches instead of the backwards-ass booking that we see these days. They had a package on next week. We're going to watch NXT because I want to see Damian Priest and Cameron Grimes. 2 guys that are different. I've already liked Cameron Grimes, and I've said I haven't seen a lot of Damian Priest, but every time I see him, I love his voice. I love his delivery verbally. I love his look. He's a grown adult man. This is what we need more of. And you'll be able to tell when these guys are having a match, you'll be able to tell which one's doing what and which one's on offense and which one's on defense. Instead of the generic, interchangeable fucking cookie cutter wrestlers that we see in a lot of the other matches. And they had, over the course of the night, a few stars picking either Adam Cole or Keith Lee. Here, Mick Foley picked Adam Cole, and then Michaels was wishy-washy and somehow picked both. I don't know how that took place. But then we got the match we wanted to see. And we only had to sit through an hour and 25 minutes of everything else. This was the best piece of business all night of both shows, and I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. It actually wasn't even close, was it? I can't think of anything on either program that was as good as this. You got two guys that people care about that are completely different, that have history, that both have a championship that they've defended for, in Adam Cole's case, well over a year. In Keith Lee's case, not long, but he beat Adam Cole's partner. There's backstories to this whole thing with Keith Lee in the Undisputed Era. So you've got story. It's built. It had as big fight of a feel as you can have with no fans in the crowd. Adam Cole comes out. He's a star on his entrance. He's got the attitude and the swagger, the look. Adam's a veteran now. You might as well go ahead and say he's not a rookie anymore, even a young guy. He's a veteran. Keith Lee is still green in spots, but God, is he a physical fucking freak. And they were able to have a big man, little man match that made sense and actually built well. And even, remember I've said Keith Lee came off verbally. Somebody on Twitter put it best. He said, Keith Lee looks like Hulk, but he talks so flowery and so verbose. And somebody on Twitter said, yeah, he looks like Hulk and he talks like Fraser Crane. Well, right as I had written, I'd love to see more Hulk and less Fraser Crane from Keith Lee when he was kind of having that smirk on his face early. All of a sudden, he starts fucking hulking up. And he caught Cole and hit that spinning power slam, and Keith Lee's shit looks devastating when he hits those power moves, but he is landing everybody flat and he's landing flat. And that's a fucking talent for a guy that size that to be able to move like that. And that power slam, he planted Adam as perfectly as I've ever seen anybody planted on a power slam. And I'm sure it's still there, but he's not fucking dangerous with anybody that I can determine. They did a great rope break where Adam Cole, did you see when he got his index finger to the fucking rope to make the break on the cover? That's, little things. But, Adam's a pro, and I think he was leading it. I saw him doing a little fucking calling, but they were taking this seriously, not fucking around. And they both do different kinds of shit that fits their appearance to make their matches different than when they wrestle other people. They also do shit and they let it breathe while they're selling. Remember we talked about on our watch-along spots, you build and set a spot up so everybody understands it when it pays off. And then when it pays off, then you kick up the pace. And then after the payoff, when everybody's screaming, then you slow it all the way down because it's got to breathe. So they did that and nothing was just being wasted. And then they went into the big moves and it was still anybody's ball game. Who's going to win this? Even the Panama Sunrise, the Adam Cole Canadian Destroyer that he hit Keith Lee with, which is ludicrous to begin with, but it didn't even look ludicrous with the way they did it. Cole comes off the ropes. There was a little fucking momentum. And then finally, he'd hit that first one and then they went and did some more stuff. And then finally he goes for the second one because that's got to do it. And suddenly Keith Lee counters it with his strength into a fucking power bomb, which didn't look too fucking comfortable. And then a big what the fuck move. Boom, 1, 2, 3. Perfect finish. You've already set it up. It's in the people's mind. He hit the one destroyer. He hits the second one. This is going to be it. No, Keith Lee comes out from under, foils the guy's move, hits one big power move, 1, 2, 3. If it'd been AEW, they'd have done 18 more false finishes, and they would have lost what they had with the people and or the viewers at home. But this was put together and agented by professionals with some sense of restraint. So as it turned out, perfect finish. And perfect finish, the right guy went over. Adams had a long run in a match like this. Not only the big guy, but the babyface needed to win. And beside, you can see Keith Lee on the main roster doing a variety of shit. And fairly soon. So I thought it was a great match. It was worth watching this, sitting through the rest of the show to see this match. And it was a perfect finish.
I really like the finish too because I watched AEW first. And there's a time and a place for near falls. But because they just went to the finish, it was kind of like jarring. Like, oh my God, that was the finish. That was it. And I like that. I'm really high on Keith Lee. I think he's tremendously talented. Adam Cole is great. I will say again, and being in there with Keith Lee, I had the thought once again, Adam Cole needs
some size.
Not just some size, some muscle tone too. I mean, I can't even explain it. I mean, he's almost built like his girlfriend.
Come on now.
No, I'm not trying to be unfair. He's really talented.
I sound like Lance now. Come on, Jerry.
He's really, really talented, but he has no size whatsoever. And anyone would look small in there against Keith Lee.
Yeah, but Adam needs some upper body.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, he just lost the title. There are rumors that he's about to, I mean, some people say he's leaving. Some people say he's going to the main roster. If he's going to the main roster, I can't see Vince giving him too much rope with that physique. And that shouldn't be the guiding factor.
Yeah, because I remember Vince didn't like Christian, and Christian looks like fucking Don Leo Jonathan next to
Yeah. But I feel bad saying it because he's a tremendously talented guy. Maybe the best guy on the mic who's an active wrestler in the whole business. But he needs some size and some definition. Or at least have some definition if you're not going to have some size. But beyond that, I'm really high on Keith Lee. I think Keith Lee is tremendous. You didn't even see the Royal Rumble. I mean, he had him in the Royal Rumble this year and had him and Lesnar square off, and I was really into that. I'd like to see where they're going to go with him. I mean, they teased, I guess the next big feud will be him and Karrion Kross, because Karrion Kross was watching from somewhere above with a cameraman.
Well, yeah, that might be a little soon. Because what are you going to do? You're going to get Karrion Kross over Keith Lee? But then Keith Lee's the one that goes to the main roster? That doesn't, I don't know.
I don't think they're bringing him up to the main roster anytime soon if they have him with both belts. If Cole's going up there, they're not going to bring him up right away. You can't bring both of those guys up.
Well, I would think that, I mean, I love Adam's talent, but I'd think they'd want to get Keith Lee on the fucking roster for the matches with fucking Brock or any of their other big, well, they don't have that many big names anymore, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Nevertheless, at least they accomplished their purpose here. And I was like you, unfortunately, because we had technical difficulties with my DVR and I had to get NXT. I was going to watch NXT first and then AEW, but I had to do the same thing you did and reverse that. And maybe that's why it was just so refreshing also to see a wrestling match break out and somebody actually get beat with a finish, because over on Tony Khan's Amateur Hour, boy, if this was the 1959, that Ted Mack line would have got a fucking huge pop. But over on Tony Khan's Amateur Hour, nobody can beat anybody with anything. Have you noticed? Nothing works. Nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. All right. AEW on July the 8th, the second part of Fyter Fest in response to the Great American Bash. Once again, we pan the highest paid audience in sports history. The librarians are still there, and they're still reading their books. Like that gimmick, like anybody gives a fuck whether they live or die or turn blue or catch fire. The librarians, they're going to work that gimmick. They're going to read their books in the crowd. They better just realize that they're getting paid like some of these other fucking clown show, Cirque du Soleil, Cirque du Bullshit, fucking rejects sitting in that audience are getting paid because Tony Khan was a sucker and took people's word for who he ought to hire for a year. They probably got about 3 months left. If I was them, I'd start sending out some resumes, because certainly to God, he's smartened up a little bit by now.
Is there anyone since AEW started who has left, who they've said, you know what, we don't have anything more for you, it's time for you to go somewhere else? Is everyone who's on the roster now been there? I mean, they've added people, but is there anyone from the beginning who has left?
Well, there's just people you don't see much of, but I think they end up on YouTube or something. But here's the thing. They've got wrestling school students, and they've got curtain jerkers like the librarians and the fucking Sunny Kisses and whatever. Why is MJF in the crowd? Why would they put any of their top... I've seen Lance Archer and Jake in the crowd. Or what if you are a top guy even in an empty arena situation, no. Find some more friends and family or some more wrestling school students or whatever, or don't have your main event guys sitting in the crowd like every other fucking jerk. That's why you've got the highest paid fucking audience in sports history, Tony Khan. So you can take these guys that nobody wanted to give contracts to and nobody wanted to pay more than $150 a night to. And you've been hornswoggled into signing them for 10 times that. So put them in the fucking crowd. That's where they belong anyway. And they're not going to draw you any money to begin with. But don't bury your top guys. Anyway, the few you have. The first tag team match was for the World Tag Team title. Private Party versus Paige and Olivier. And they VTR'd last week's sloppy finishes where Private Party actually beat Santana and Ortiz and Paige and Olivier, whatever the fuck they did. So that they have some understanding of, well, when we book something, we should show that this guy won this match to get here and that guy won that match to get here. They just can't pick the matches and they can't call the finishes. So they're not hopelessly lost. And Paige and Olivier still have separate entrances. As at first they didn't like each other. Then they kept miscuing and hitting each other. Then they were going to break up, but they never broke up. Do you think they've been ribbing us all along and they're never going to break up? And that was just all bullshit?
No, I think
for no reason?
I think they're going to break up because I think that's the big singles feud they're waiting for with Omega. All those people who are out there crying, where's the New Japan Omega? There are people who actually like Omega, unlike you, who wonder, how come we're not seeing the Omega that we saw in New Japan? What is this watered-down Kenny Omega that they're paying all this money to?
There's no world-class talent to drag him through a match and no world-class fucking bookers and agents to tell him what to do, for one thing, but go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of people are waiting for something, and I think the feud with Adam Page is going to be that thing where it'll elevate Adam Page, hopefully, and Kenny Omega will finally show everyone what he could do.
Well, the only thing that it will elevate Adam Page is for Page just beat fucking Olivier and move on to top talent. How the fuck is it going to elevate Adam Page when he already looks better than Kenny Olivier in the fucking ring? Anyway, as much as they're making, by the way, as World Tag Team Champions, can they get new vests? Especially fucking Olivier. It looks like he slapped a fucking piece of roadkill pelt on the back of a goddamn Carl and Hildegard special from the 70s. And that's his fucking ring outfit.
To be fair, that means he had only the second worst ring outfit in the match, because Private Party have one of the most indie-rific outfits in wrestling, I have to say.
Actually, my next note was Private Party's outfits are so outlaw, especially Mark Quinn. What the fuck? They look like... It's if like Betty Page was a fucking center for the Lakers. I don't know what they're playing basketball or they're fucking wearing leopard print. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. And so Olivier and Page do the phony double chop spot with Mark Quinn. They stay in the ring, double teaming. The ref's slow counting. The Private Party partner ain't doing anything. The announcer's saying, well, they got a 10 count to get out, when the referee's standing there with his hands in his nuts. Olivier and Page were almost kind of working heel because, as I wrote in capitals with 4 question marks, who are the fucking baby faces? None of these matches make any sense. It's outlaw mud show indie booking. That's what you get when you just put guys together, because the indie booking with no babyface and heels happens because there's just a bunch of names with no television and no solid, consistent booker to form these people and present them. But they have a television show and they allegedly have a booker, maybe more than one, and they still don't know who the fucking heels and babyfaces are. And then Mark Quinn did a big dive onto a bunch of guys who were standing there waiting to catch him. When have we ever heard of that happening? And then, as I wrote, all 4 in ring forever doing awkward shit to each other over and over. Adam Page is okay, but the greenness and herky-jerkiness of Private Party and Kenny Olivier is just glaring. Mark Quinn needs to work with veterans and be in a full-time training program a la OVW or NXT because he can be a superstar with that athletic ability. But the more he works with guys like fucking Omega and these indie fucks, he's going to just stagnate, and he's never going to learn how to work mentally, just do physical moves. That's all these guys are doing, is they're imitating moves that they've seen other people do. They don't know why they're doing them. And until you can get a guy like Mark Quinn in a fucking training program and working in the ring with veterans, calling it on the fly and showing him what the fuck, then that's a big waste of talent because he's special. But right now, this is just fucking gaga. They did shit to each other forever and ever, over and over. They tagged when and where and if they wanted to. There was no babyface or heels. There was no heat or comebacks. You couldn't follow who was on offense or defense from 1 minute to the next. There was no semblance of a contest. And I couldn't even figure out who the legal men were. And finally, Olivier and Paige hit their fucking double team 1, 2, 3. What the fuck? And that was that match. I don't know what the fuck they were doing. Over and over.
Yeah.
You know what? You have a rotten fucking job here. You have a rotten spot because I've just basically said everything that can be said about this, and then I pitch it to you to elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched Midnight Express versus Southern Boys. And then I watched this, which was incredibly sloppy. No fucking rules. No rules. Why have a referee? Why not just get rid of the referee? Why not start doing wrestling matches with no referee if the referee doesn't really do anything? And if there are no rules? And if both guys who are on the team could just be in the ring at the same time endlessly without anyone trying to get them out of the ring or a 10 count or a 5 count or anything. I didn't like this match. I thought it was incredibly sloppy. I think Private Party have looked worse and worse each and every time I've seen them. I think Adam Page is really talented, and I can't wait for them to do something else with him. And that's all I have to say about that.
I did make an observation that Excalibur or Excrement or whatever his name is should wear his mask should be over his mouth with his face exposed. And just wear the mask over his mouth. That way we wouldn't have to listen to him either.
Why were the commentators, I mean, they're in the same venue they broadcast from each and every week. Other than the fact that it's the Fyter Fest, whatever the hell that means, why are they wearing Hawaiian shirts all of a sudden?
Because they're at Fyter Fest and they're in Florida, I guess.
They're the same place they broadcast from each and every week.
Well, it's a theme. Like you had Justin Roberts out there in the fucking the Charlie Sheen button-up shirt and the fucking baggy shorts with candy in his pockets. I don't fucking know.
Oh, come on.
Then next we had, wait for that one to set in, Lance Archer versus Jelly Nutella. And I determined a long time ago I quit knocking this fucking goof because this is the one guy in the business, Jelly Nutella, that wants to be known as a complete blithering dipshit, as the worst ever, as just a complete waste of flesh. But as long as somebody's talking about him, he doesn't give a shit. So there's really nothing you can fucking say to him or about him, even if it's true, that makes a fuck to the guy.
Well, the one thing I get a kick out of is, there are people on this show that you don't like, and there are people I don't like as wrestlers. You have a problem with Kenny Omega. And you'll go to a lot of different places, and you'll see people say that you're crazy. Omega's the best in the world. Whatever, something like that. With Jelly Nutella, he is a rarity in that he's someone that you don't see anything in. I don't see anything in. And you go to message boards or you go to Twitter, and it's old fans, it's new fans, and almost universally,
nobody sees anything.
Almost universally, everyone agrees. You'll see people who love AEW that are like, why is this guy on my TV? This guy looks like crap. This guy wrestles like crap. His promos are garbage. Almost everyone agrees with that.
And you know what the worst thing is about somebody like that? the worst thing about somebody like that is when you can see them actually wrestling and acting like that they are convinced in their own mind that they are good. Somehow it's like the dream sequence on Always Sunny, when the whole gang was on fucking crack or LSD or something. They thought they were doing this great musical number, and then you flash back to reality and they're just standing there screaming at the top of their lungs while people are covering their fucking ears. It's what fucking Jelly does versus what he thinks he does.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, like I said, you can go to message boards that are very pro AEW, and in those threads, you will see people that, why is this guy on the show? This guy's not good. You know, is he just a after-show party mascot? Is he a pity hire? And then, of course, you have a situation like this, where you take a guy with an incredibly small amount of talent, if any, and you put him in there against a guy that's supposed to be a monster, and for some reason I can't understand, it goes past the commercial break. This glorified squash match, which should have been over in seconds, if not a minute at the most, was given 2 segments, and I can't wait to see the ratings.
And apparently Jelly's mother gave him a raise in his allowance because he was able to pay whoever agented this fucking abortion to get some offense in on their new top heel, or their old top heel. He might have been going to be their top heel at one point, but that's old news. Lance Archer's deader than 4 o'clock. Lance, I love you from TNA, but you've made a bad decision with your career here. They bring him in. They give him Jake as his manager. He's supposed to be a murder hawk. And they have literally had him in with every fucking Outlaw Mud Show freak goof that they've hired on the roster.
That he can't beat. That he can't beat in a minute. He couldn't beat Marco Stunt in a minute. He can't beat Jelly Nutella in a minute.
And not only that, okay, let me just go through my notes quickly. Jelly's ponytail is as tall as he is. Archer comes out with Sonny Kiss in his arms and throws Sonny Kiss over the top rope onto Jelly, who just catches him, and they all just fall down. Sonny Kiss looked like he was being rocked to sleep in his mother's arms when he... Who comes up with this shit? And why do they think everything needs to be funny? What about a big 6'8" murder hawk monster managed by the evil Jake Roberts? What about that do you think needs to be funny with underneath preliminary job talent on national television?
I'll tell you something funny. Jake was wearing his Grizzly outfit. You see what he was wearing? He was wearing Grizzly.
I didn't pay attention to it. Oh my God, no! The fucking the jacket and all the layers and stuff, and
just the blue denim or whatever that was.
All right. Anyway, so then Archer is selling for Jelly Nutella. Jelly brings out a table. Not only has he never been trained, I wrote, but his booker and agent haven't either, or this would have not been happening. Who set this up? I wrote, to make their new top heel look like a buffoon being competitive with a child-sized homeless bum off the street. Then Archer tries to get some heat, too late. Then it goes to the break. When they come back, Jelly is firing off the worst horrible, phony punches. He hits like a girl, and his hair matches that fucking... Anyway, the worst, phoniest looking comeback ever, and Archer had to stand there for it. I dare everybody, go back and watch the comeback where Archer's just standing and staggering for this little fucking sway-backed fucking clown. It's rotten. Then, did I or did I not see Jelly Nutella foil Lance Archer's finish when he tried to put it on him? He came out of it. Nobody here cares about making a star or knows how to do it. They are trying to, and Lance Archer somehow was talked into trying to give Jelly a good match instead of going out and doing business and potentially selling a ticket or getting some interest for the company by getting over the fucking schlubs. How many goddamn shining examples of fucking wrestling professionalism did Ken Woodby get on Atlanta TV?
Ken Woodby.
Then the referee got distracted by Jake for some reason.
Yeah, why? Why? This is
because
the second time in a row. I know, but I understand that reasoning, but this is the second time in a row that Lance Archer's had a match where Jake inexplicably distracted the referee at a point where it actually hurt his guy.
Well, what he was doing was he was complaining about what had been done previously, but once he gets up and complains about it, he can see the baby faces doing all kinds of shit to his guy over the referee's fucking shoulder, but he chooses to ignore that. So Jake gets up and complains, and then Sonny Kiss, not only Jelly comes off the top on Lance Archer, and then Sonny Kiss comes off the top on Lance Archer. The faces, the baby faces, not only outnumber the heel, but are cheating against the heel. The preliminary losing job guy fucking extras are beating the shit out of Lance Archer. And then Lance Archer suddenly gives Jelly his finish off the apron through a table. And then fucking throws him in 1, 2, 3. So to beat Cody Rhodes or Jon Moxley, Lance Archer apparently needs a baseball bat, a high caliber handgun, and a fucking possibly a threshing tool off a farm. Because if it was this difficult for him to beat these two schlubs that nobody cares about, that no fans think are fucking top talent, and that are never going to be in a main event anywhere, but it takes him 20 minutes to beat them. Lance Archer versus Cody. Lance Archer versus Jon Moxley. Lance Archer versus fucking any goddamn name in the business. That instantly just became so unattractive to me and everybody else that saw this.
You know, there's been a lot of questionable booking in AEW, but is there a better example than Lance Archer? They bring him in, they give him Jake. Jake comes out and does a promo confronting Cody Rhodes, one of the top stars in the company, saying that I got someone for you, Caesar. I'm bringing him in for you. Then they finally debut Lance Archer. They do that video of him beating up all these guys on a farm or wherever the hell they were. Then Jake dry humps Brandy Rhodes. And then they have the match. And Cody wins. And then what? And in the meantime, he can't beat Marco Stunt in a minute. He can't beat Jelly Nutella in a minute. This is awful booking. This is not good booking. Just using Lance Archer as the example.
It's mark booking. It's booking done by marks who have looked from the outside and decided that they know how it's done. And, oh, I remember when so-and-so did such and such, so I'll do that. And they don't have any fucking understanding or any depth of understanding of what the goddamn situation is. That's what we're seeing here. And a lot of guys going along with it because they're making a lot of money. They better enjoy it while they can. The interview with Taz and Brian Cage was very good. Taz is a great promo. He shamed Moxley for putting the match off till next week and presented the FTW, the Fuck the World belt from ECW to Brian Cage. This was a good promo. I am not sure why he would give the belt to his guy the week before his guy is supposed to win the big belt. Wouldn't it be a thing where he would build up the match for the AEW title, Moxley would escape by the skin of his teeth, and then Taz would say, because it obviously was a miscarriage of justice that Brian Cage didn't win, I'm going to crown him the real champion around here, the FTW champion, and give him the belt to fucking crow about afterwards, after he doesn't win the big one over Moxley. But am I just going too deep into this?
No, that makes more sense, but let me ask you this. And by the way, I agree with you. Taz has been one of the highlights in that company the last few weeks. He may be the best promo in the business right now, or at least the best promo in AEW, doing great interviews. But if they know, because the match next week is Moxley versus Cage, Fight for the Fallen. Every event now, every television show has an event name.
Yes.
Moxley's been out the last couple of weeks because his wife tested positive for COVID-19. If by chance Moxley can't make that match, does it make sense giving Cage the FTW belt before that match?
No. It would then make sense giving it to him afterwards anyway, because, okay, Moxley, you didn't show up, you're scared, you got a bad case of the chicken shits. Well, from now on, you're going to be put in the position of challenger, because until you beat Brian Cage, you are not the real champion, the FTW champion. And give him the belt there and let him, while Moxley's sitting at fucking home, he's got a fucking heel throwing gold around all over the place, claiming to be the champion. That gives him a reason to want to come back and fucking get even.
You want to talk about something that looks like it would have fit into other times in wrestling history where things were good? Taz and Cage. I actually really like them together. Cage has a great look. Taz is really good on the mic. Obviously, they had a Darby Allin video. I guess he's still mad at Taz and Cage. So I guess that may be the next feud.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ. But no! Put fucking Darby Allin, that little he looks like a fucking Q-tip with that fucking jacked up monster Brian Cage. And Darby Allin I know he's got a lot of appeal, natural appeal, but every time he opens his mouth or I see anything that he really does, it just makes me dislike him. Why, as a wrestling fan, do I like this? He's not medically cleared to wrestle, so he just was on a fucking big tower with a friend of his and jumped off into a fucking big thing of boxes or foam rubber or something, but he can't fucking wrestle.
Why isn't he medically cleared? Did they actually give a reason on the show?
I don't know. I don't know if this is real or he just can't come because he's of the COVID or whatever the fuck.
But either way, did they give an explanation? That's my point.
I don't know. It's sure not being reiterated often. I see him jumping off a lot of shit like an idiot. If I'm a professional athlete and I'm not medically cleared to compete, then what the fuck am I? I'm a complete idiot if I go out and do stupid, risky shit for fun and damage my professional career. Did Muhammad Ali, the day before he fought Frazier, fucking go out and fucking skateboard? So this whole thing, they just make Darby Allin seem like a goof, I guess, to appeal to most of their audience, because most of their audience is goofs, so they wouldn't be watching this shit. But don't make him a goof. Make him a smart guy, because he's supposed to be a babyface that you're supposed to like. I don't fucking know. Anyway, so far, 45 minutes into the show, we've got one good promo. Let's pick it up a little bit. FTR's coming out. Oh, joy. Oh, wait. I forgot. The Butcher and the Baker and the two Lucha Brothers drive up in FTR's truck that they stole last week and still didn't give it back. Besides the fact that I think the police would have got into it at this point, like I said last week, these guys come in the hottest fucking tag team in the business, outsiders, free agents, a lot of talk, the best in the world at what they do. And 2 weeks later, the fucking mid-card fucking heel team steals their shit. And then they sign an 8-man tag match. Butcher and Baker and the Lucha Brothers against FTR and the Young Bucks. Brian, do you remember right before the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express started the biggest box office drawing tag team program of all fucking time, that Rocky King and the Italian Stallion stole my tennis racket, and then the Midnight teamed up with the Rock and Roll to get even against them and the New Breed? You remember that, don't you?
No, of course not. And this is one of the big problems. FTR delivers the goods. Every match they've had on TV has been great. They are...
Well, every match, we could say that until last night.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But they know what they're doing. They're really good. The natural feud, the one that could have been done really well, the one that people would have a natural interest in, with the Bucks,
is over.
The booking of FTR since they've come in has been atrocious. Atrocious. There's no bigger fan of them than me. The booking has been horrible for FTR.
That's why I was hoping they'd just go into business for themselves and see if somebody wanted to fucking man up and tell them they were going to do something about it. But apparently they're not. They're going to be professional, in which case they might as well just fucking fold up and go home, because they have left themselves at the mercy of complete incompetence. FTR and the Lucha Brothers started, and actually it was good stuff. It made sense. The Lucha Brothers slowed down a little bit. You could understand who was pitching, who was catching. Then the Bucks tag in, and immediately it's 100 miles an hour, and the shit starts getting awkward. And the stuff with Butcher and Baker starts falling apart. But now the FTR heels, Bucks are faces, Butcher and Baker are fucking heels. Lucha Brothers are in between. They act like heels sometimes, but people like them.
But why are FTR heels? They have not been portrayed as heels on TV yet.
But they should be heels. They are heels, but they're not in this environment. So nobody is, what the fuck? They go to a break. They come back. The baker is getting heat on Cash. So now the Butcher and the Baker are heels, but FTR's baby faces. But then Cash makes a hot, and at first, the first segment, they did the deal where FTR would just tag each other, which that's small comfort and a little help. At least that was good in the midst of all this shit that shouldn't have been happening. But then Cash makes a hot tag to Road Warrior Buck. And immediately, Road Warrior Buck starts making a comeback on the Lucha Brothers, and it looks like kids in costumes playing wrestler. And then it got really complicated, and everybody did everything to everybody, and nothing made sense. And finally, and FTR was involved in this. I love you, boys, but you see what you've gotten yourselves into. I don't need to tell you this. It's a sad state of affairs when the best tag team in the world can't show what they can do in either company because one doesn't like tag teams and the other one doesn't like anything that makes any fucking sense. Did you see where the Young Bucks and FTR tagged each other in all at the same time?
Yes, I saw that.
You realize, of course, you can't do that. That's never been a thing that you could do, and nobody's ever done it before. And for the people who didn't see this, one member of the team gets tagged in and then turns around and tags the other one. The other one steps in and turns around and tags another one. The other one steps in until they're all tagged. So they're all allegedly supposed to be legal for the 10 seconds that this goof mark promotion allegedly gives you to double team when nobody ever fucking pays any attention to that either, except the announcers when they're being buried by talking about it when it's not happening in the ring. Then the Bucks did a double superplex and FTR did a splash and a senton or whatever the fuck it was for a 2 count. All 4 of these guys hit one guy with a goddamn move and there was a save. It was a 2 count. And by the way, tag teams, here's something else you apparently don't know. When you get tagged in, you have to make contact with your opponent before you can tag out. Otherwise, it's not legal. It's been that way since the dawn of fucking time. But now on both programs, they're doing this where they tag a guy in and the guy steps in and tags another guy. No, you can't just make this shit up. Anyway, everything then came to a halt so Road Warrior Buck and the Lucha Brother could do their stupid trade chop spot. A Lucha Brother did a Canadian Destroyer over the top rope onto a guy, onto a pile of people standing there waiting to catch him. Holy shit, holy shit. Stupidest looking thing I've ever seen. And then Road Warrior Buck super kicks Dax by mistake, and the Lucha Brothers double team Road Warrior Buck and pin him 1, 2, 3. Cash is nowhere around. The Brothers nowhere around. Balding Buck. The fucking Lucha Brothers, I know they're big stars in Lucha, but let's face it, they got a ceiling here in this country, which is basically the amount of people that watch this fucking hokey program. And that's it. So their best tag team in the world, FTR, and their supposed best tag team that is called that because they're vice presidents of the company, the Young Bucks, get beat by a middle card tag team and 2 Mexicans. In less than 1 month, they have taken FTR from being the red hot outsiders, getting all the attention and all the talk, to another team on the roster, and not even an impressive one. Congratulations, you amateur fucks. I wouldn't be able to fucking bury this much talent if I was trying in a month. If I was going to sit down and say, how can I write these television programs to make these people as meaningless as possible? I couldn't come up with this shit. Comments before we move on. I'm getting tired of this. We got stuff to do.
Well, I think I enjoyed it a little more than you did, although, as you pointed out, there were a lot of ridiculous moments. There's nothing more ridiculous in all of wrestling than tough guy Matt Jackson. Nothing at all. He's called Road Warrior Buck for a reason. It's completely ridiculous. In the midst of all this chaos, stopping and doing the trading slap spot in the middle of the ring. I hate that. We've seen it on this show.
Yeah.
Several times recently. Not a fan of that. Obviously, next week it's FTR versus the Lucha Brothers. I am actually curious how that's going to be. That's going to be a big test for these guys.
I don't think at this, the Lucha Brothers early in this match working with FTR showed that they will slow down and listen, but I don't honestly think, I think there'll be a language barrier. Lucha Brothers are just, they're too Lucha and not American enough. I don't think it's possible to have the quality of match with the Lucha Brothers that FTR has been known for. They can get it out of them. I'm not optimistic.
They should have come in and started cutting promos on the Bucks, attacking the Bucks, have the Bucks let's see what the Bucks can do.
Make their lives miserable.
Let's see the Bucks cut a fired up promo where they're not just laid back SoCal douchebags.
With a man bun.
Because they're mad
with
about
a man bun.
FTR.
Hey, by the way, remind me, if I'm ever in the same room with a man wearing a bun, I should take a baseball bat to his fucking head. Just on principle.
Well, the point is, they have bungled the booking of FTR coming into AEW. Now they're just a couple guys on the roster. And that was the exact opposite of what they should have been. Everyone's been waiting for this match. There's been a debate amongst fans about who's the best tag team. Now they're teaming up with these idiots and sharing finishing maneuvers with them.
Imagine if the bad guy and Big Daddy Cool, when they showed up on Nitro 25 years ago, the next week had been booked in an 8-man tag with 2 of the WCW guys on their fucking team.
Well, that's a bad example because that is one of the most successful things in the history of wrestling. What if, when the Legion of Doom went into the World Wrestling Federation in 1990, they started teaming up with Demolition?
Good one there. That would have been rotten too. But it might have been better than the fucking ventriloquist dummy.
What if the original Midnight Express came in and teamed with the Midnight Express?
Teamed up with the Midnight. What if they had a handicap match with Nyla Rose against Kenzie Page and Kylan King? Or Kalen King, whoever the fuck. Let me get this straight. 9 months that this television program has been on the air, and since that time, since it's been on the air, a lot of people decided to quit breathing it. But when they have already botched Nyla Rose's booking beyond all hope, abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. Then, after 9 months, after she's won and lost titles and matches and bumped for 90-pound fucking Japanese schoolgirls, then they give her her proper debut match. Is it our fault? Are we watching this in reverse?
No, they don't know how to book a women's division. They're really bad at booking a women's division.
Well, but this was perfect.
No, this was good.
This was perfect. If this had been Nyla Rose's television debut, this would have been perfect. She worked like Andre. She sold nothing. She beat these girls up and beat them 1, 2, 3.
And then here's the other problem. Nyla Rose, who actually cuts a good promo, does a promo announcing that she has a manager.
Yeah.
She's one who can actually talk. And now she's going to have a manager. We joked last week about how many managers they have in AEW. We could add another one to the list. I don't know if it'll be Vicky Guerrero. I don't know if it'll be a mystery manager. But Nyla Rose, someone who could actually speak effectively, will now have a manager.
Anyway, 4 or 5 of these before she started bumping around for every girl on the roster, and it might have been a different story, and it might have actually meant something when she did lose a match or she did bump for the girls 1/4 of her size. But since we didn't see these beforehand, might as well fucking fold up and go home anyway also on this one, because it's fucking lost. It's a lost cause. And the promo getting a manager, besides the fact of, at this point, what the fuck? Right now we're going to try, we'll give her a manager and try to restore the credibility that she would have had if we'd have booked her right from the start. But did you see the ladies champion in the front row?
Yeah, she always looks mad or just
no,
unhappy.
She looked like, because she looked like she just wandered in off the third shift at the fucking Thornton's station. The ladies champion in the front row of the fans with no makeup on, no hairdo on, a Walmart t-shirt, holding her belt and looking pissed. Can you see Trish Stratus or Sable or any other major women's superstar in the other company over the last 20 years looking like she just rolled out of fucking bed and put a fucking nightshirt on in the front row on a national television program?
Only if Kenny Omega liked them.
She likes his Sega.
By the way, Hikaru Shida, they did a promo package with her the week before, and they had subtitles on the screen. She spoke perfect English. Perfect. It was easier to understand her than Jim Ross. And they had subtitles on the screen. Perfect English. It blew me away. I couldn't believe it. She sounded great.
Lovely. Who told Brody Lee he should talk? Who told Brody Lee he should ever open his fucking mouth? There's Brody Lee in the back with Colt Cabana, who had a fucking hell of a bruise, right? Half of his side was covered black and blue.
Yeah, what happened? Was he hit by a bus? What the hell happened?
You can take bumps, and that happens. I mean, he took some kind of bad bump with all the goofy stuff these fucking guys all do. But bro, that's when I was thinking, here they've actually got a visual injury they can make something out of, and there's Brody Lee, the black hole of charisma. Not only does he have no charisma, but he sucks in all the charisma around him with the gravitational pull of a black hole. And it's just bleh. So what they have now is SCU, Scorpio Sky, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, three great athletes, against Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, and Stu Grayson, along with 5 Stooges wearing masks. So this visually looked so fucking outlaw and indie and just low budget, low rent talent, goofy looking shit, just to turn it on. I don't know what the ratings were. Maybe you don't tell me if you know, find them, look for them, but I can't see any way in the world this outlaw fucking television program won any kind of a ratings battle.
We'll discuss the ratings after you're finished with your review. The ratings.
All right. Well, that's right. I don't want to know anything. But it was a regular indie match. There was nothing great. There was nothing rotten. It's regular stuff that indie guys do. Colt Cabana, the patient zero of comedy wrestling. This show is so far over the fucking shark that Colt Cabana was serious. I mean, that's, he can work when he wants to. He's just always been fucking the Jolly Joker, but he looks like a goddamn serious athlete on this fucking Saturday Night Live sketch. And they go through a break. And when they come back, here was what I saw. I saw Colt Cabana tags Brody Lee in. Lee comes in, and without touching anybody, Lee tags Grayson. And then Colt shoots Scorpio Sky to the turnbuckle and hits an ass bump. Then Brody Lee scoop slams Scorpio Sky, and then Grayson splashes him off the top, and the referee fucking counted for it. Like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, the fucking guy that's supposed to be legal was standing over in the corner waiting for all these other guys. They're making this shit up. Stu Grayson, in the outfit he wears in the ring, I wrote, looks like a hazed pledge in a fraternity ritual. Somebody's taken a Sharpie and written shit on his face. They've shaved awkward parts of his body. They're making him wear some kind of skirt. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Brody Lee, the most boring wrestler in the world. So everybody in this match did everything to each other. I don't know what the fuck. And then finally, Daniels got mad at Colt and shoved him or punched him. Brody Lee knocked Daniels out, but he let Colt get the pin because he's trying to buddy up to Colt in this dramatic, fucking program of the year, of the decade that they've booked in their own minds where they think anybody gives a fuck about the Dork Order. And this still continues. Did they not start this on their first television show? It's 9 months later, and they are still not going to give up on this shit.
Well, I heard something recently. I didn't listen to it, but apparently, I think it may have been on Chris Jericho's show, which is probably why I didn't listen to it. They were discussing AEW, and he came out and said the Dork Order, this whole thing was the Young Bucks idea from day one. And originally, Matt Hardy was going to be the Exalted One, and then there was someone else. I don't know if it was Marty Scurll or someone else. Maybe Marty Scurll was going to be the Exalted One. Brody Lee was actually the third choice.
Does Marty Scurll come off to you as an Exalted One?
I have not seen as much Marty Scurll as you have, so I couldn't really comment. But
he's a fine talent, but I don't see him as a cult leader. But anyway.
But the Dork Order apparently is a Young Bucks booking creation. Those booking geniuses.
Well, there you go.
Bucks.
Hey, they should have stuck to their little fucking funny YouTube show they do with their play friends, and it'd been fine.
That's ridiculous, Jim. That show is not funny.
No, I just said they should have stuck with it. Then I wouldn't have had to seen any of this.
Because
I would watch that. Well, they're funny little show. It's a funny show, all right. Anyway, Big Swole snuck in. She'd been denied access earlier. But she snuck in and argued with Britt Baker and Reba. And everybody talked and screeched over everybody else. And then Reba sold a wadded up paper cup that she got thrown in her face and smacked Britt Baker in the face accidentally. And everybody went crazy. Holy fuck.
Well, that was ridiculous, too. What did they say? The official statement was that Big Swole was suspended for kidnapping.
Yeah. And had some fucking nondescript civilian woman tell her she couldn't come in the building. At the back door earlier. I don't fucking know.
So kidnapping is a no-no in AEW. However, Grand Theft Auto.
That's okay.
That's okay.
If you steal the truck, you get to drive it like you stole it and keep it. Anyway, here comes the main event. I know we've been waiting for this one, folks. I've been waiting for this one to be over with, and it's going to be shortly. Pockets versus Chris Jericho. Yes. And the first thing I wrote, I hope somebody shows the video of this to Vince McMahon, because he will laugh until he has a fucking stroke. And then they keep handing him this stuff. He will then take that tape and he will show everybody in his locker room, see, if you leave me and you go take that fucking billionaire Money Marks money, this is the kind of shit you're going to be doing on television. Look, even Jericho. And that will put the fear of God and ruin careers in anybody jumping to AEW again, even for the money. They're handing them this material. If Vince McMahon saw this, I don't know what he would have one of two feelings. He would either feel sorry for Chris Jericho and feel sad that Jericho left the company for Jericho's own sake, or he would laugh his fucking balls off. I don't know why they want to hand this to and here, Vince, have a laugh, have a joke, have a fucking good chuckle at us at our own expense. Pockets came to the ring with his serious face on and sent his friends back. And Jericho comes out with Santana and Ortiz and a baseball bat. So, and everybody has always said that tried to defend my little dog Pockets, this fucking little cretin. But when he starts trying, he really can work. When he really turns it on, he can work. What the fuck? Brian, have you ever heard any wrestling fan? I've been going to wrestling matches and listening to wrestling fans for almost 50 years now. Have you ever heard any of them say that match was really great once they stopped the fake part and started really wrestling? No. Once they stop the fake part and start really trying, Pockets starts the quote-unquote biggest match of his life with Chris fucking Jericho, one of the biggest stars of the last 20 years, with his hands in his pockets, hitting the ropes with his hands in his pockets. Who would ever do that? Why would anyone ever really act like this fucking moronic imbecile acts? They've never explained it. You can't explain it because there's no reasoning for it. It's just a goof act. Nobody would ever really act like this or do these things if they were in a fight. Therefore, this is a Saturday Night Live sketch of fucking wrestling and wrestlers. If you start like caca, the whole thing is caca. I can't review this as a wrestling match. So, basically what happened is they took 25 minutes of national television time because a fucking silly billionaire that probably can't even get his fucking willy hard has decided that he wants to tell grown adult men, some of them, what to do. And so he has decided to book a nondescript, average-sized, pale white guy in jeans and sneakers who is athletic enough to imitate wrestling moves. He's going to put him in the ring and allow him to have a match with and be carried by one of the bigger wrestling stars of the past 20 years who now realizes that he is by far the smartest and highest paid guy here, and he can just ass off whenever he wants and still steal the show on personality alone, but be embarrassing when it comes to professional wrestling. JR's pitch to the break showed that he was tired of the whole thing, including plugging the picture-in-picture. They came back after the break, and it looked immediately like Make-A-Wish set some kid up to have his fucking match with a superstar before it was too late. This fucking idiot's selling is fine. If he had ever been presented seriously as a wrestler from the start, he'd be a good underneath babyface or a tag partner. Maybe one of the big stars could take him under his wing. You could get a few gimmick matches out of him. Maybe, but not now. Because now everybody knows he's a phony fucking goof. And then after a long heat where Jericho fucking beat the shit out of him, what does he do to start his comeback? He puts his hands back in his pockets and he does the fake shin kicks. And Chris Jericho knows that he doesn't have to do anything for the rest of his life that he doesn't want to do except do silly shit and not risk his own health. And he doesn't care about his legacy in wrestling because he's one of the cool kids now. And he's taking a billionaire's money. So he's allowing this to happen. Pockets gets 2 close false finishes on Chris Jericho. As soon as I wrote that, make it 3. So Jericho has no chance ever against Jon Moxley, who would be able to beat him in seconds. Or Cody, who could beat him in seconds. Because preliminary comedy wrestler Pockets is giving Chris Jericho all he can fucking handle. The match made sense because Jericho called it every step. You can actually see him putting his hand over his mouth and telling the fucking idiot what to do next. But this clown's gimmick makes it impossible for anybody to take him seriously or for him to be a main event guy. So what this was, in effect, was a complete waste of Chris Jericho trying to get a guy over, because you could have had this match with Jungle Boy. You could have had this match with any real athlete, serious wrestler to elevate, and they would have. They would have looked better coming out of it than they did going into it, because they would be real, legitimate wrestlers you could take seriously. But Jericho, just, I guess, because he wanted to show people that he could get anybody over, no matter how fucking worthless they are, has a goddamn, on his part, 4-star match with this fucking clown. And that means the next time he does it for somebody that has a chance of getting over, it won't have the same impact. You can't elevate Cheetah. Jane is always going to be the co-star. Tarzan's the guy. Cheetah is the comedy spot. When was the movie where Cheetah suddenly teamed up with Tarzan and Cheetah rescued Tarzan throughout the entire fucking movie? Or together they beat up the goddamn evil white poachers? No. If you gotta have Cheetah, and the kids liked Cheetah, stick Cheetah in the middle of the movie for 4 or 5 minutes doing some heartwarming flips and grinning and doing something a human being might do. And then get back to the fucking movie. Fuck you, Orange Cassidy, you Chikara dropout, pajama-wearing fucking Mexican wrestling wannabe bunch of fucks, and your fucking leader named Mike Quackenbush, like he's a goddamn reject from a 1930s Marx Brother Broadway play, and all your joke wrestling and your funny names and your stupid bullshit that you got a limited number of people in a hick town in Pennsylvania to buy for a number of years. And now, because some of your buddies buddied up to a money mark, one of them actually gets on national television to be chosen as the recipient of the Make-A-Wish to have a match with a real superstar. It was embarrassing and it was bullshit. Fuck all of you. Then Santana and Ortiz hit him with fucking oranges. The best friends come out. They get in a schmoz. Jericho hits him with a baseball bat and a code breaker and gets a 2 count. And immediately Pockets comes up and scoops him up and hits a Michinoku driver and gets a 2 count. And then Pockets hits a big DDT and gets a 2 count. And then I wrote the words, will this ever fucking end? And guess what happened? The DVR stopped because they couldn't even hit their fucking time cue and they went overtime on the live show. And as far as I know, it never did end. But I'm glad I didn't have to see any more of it. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck all of this.
You need to stop ripping up these notes.
I've never been so fucking embarrassed. I would have been embarrassed for them, but it was their own fault. So I'm just embarrassed for the people that sat through that thinking they were actually going to see something worthwhile. So, as far as I'm concerned, NXT won the fucking night because they had one really good fucking title match that had a great finish, excellent work with stars that were over and was serious and meant to be that way. And the rest of the show was eh. Meanwhile, AEW was a goddamn clown show and train wreck from the start to the finish, and the wrestlers that are good somehow came out looking worse than they did going in. So, I say NXT won this because last week was a draw and this week NXT was better. It's faint praise, I know, because neither show was goddamn stellar. What did the viewers say?
Well, we have the ratings as well as a comment from Tony Khan. The ratings...
Was it an apology?
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Which rating would you like first?
Well, that may tell us something. I don't know. Just give it to us in a goddamn, in however order it's written.
AEW, 715,000 viewers. NXT, 759,000 viewers.
Well, there you go.
The third week in a row that NXT has won the ratings battle.
And let me ask you a question. If I remember correctly, NXT started out with what, about a million or less than a million viewers?
I don't have...
Do you remember that?
I only have the 2020 ratings here. I don't have the...
But I'm saying they started back last September, October. They were... NXT was right under a million, I think, when they started going up head to head. And meanwhile, remember the first week, AEW was almost 1.5 million people?
I remember it being over a million. I don't remember the exact number.
It was almost 1.5 because I remember that because they were, oh, this is going to be great. Everything's going to be great. Well, from what I'm hearing, NXT has basically, during the pandemic, empty arena and everything, lost 100 and 150,000 of the people they started with, and AEW has lost 700,000.
Well, it's interesting because if we go back to the beginning of the year, NXT, for the most part, is steady within its range. It's actually up a bit. You know, the first 3 weeks of 2020, 548,000 viewers. I believe that would be one of their lowest ever.
Oh, good God. Well, wait, but that was New Year's, right?
That's New Year's, yes.
That's New Year's. New Year's was a Wednesday. Okay.
Well, let's go with the 3 weeks after that. 721,000, 700,000, 769,000. Again, this past week, they were 759. Last week, they were 792.
Yeah.
So there's a range there. AEW, starting with January 8th, 947,000 viewers, 940,000 viewers, 871,000 viewers. This past week, they were 715,000 viewers. Clearly, both shows took a hit, like most.
Well, now, wait a minute. Let's ask this, though, because we brought them some back. Because the last 2 weeks we have watched and talked about these programs, because the week before when we had stopped watching, weren't they down to about 600,000 when all of our people left because they couldn't have any fun with it anymore?
Well, again, if we go, there are a couple of big hits here. When the pandemic really struck, April 1st, AEW did 685,000 viewers, which was down from 819 the week before. That's really the line where you could say, okay, there's a big hit here. For comparison's sake, AEW went from 669 to 590. Not as big a hit as AEW went through. NXT, I don't know if I said NXT there as I'm talking out loud.
Yeah, but then they've come back up, but AEW has stayed flat.
And then after the football field match, when they had Mike Tyson on the show, they did 827,000 viewers, followed by 730, 677, 772, 633, and then last week was the first week we watched again, 748, although people didn't know yet that we were watching the show.
Well, we talked about it. I think it's enough. So we brought about 115,000. What's that? About a third of our audience. We brought about 115,000 to them from that week.
But here's the thing. Like I said, if you go back to the beginning of the year, and look, the pandemic has hurt something like professional wrestling. It'll be really interesting now when sports come back, how that hurts things. Because again, these numbers are down without there being sports, really just news programming. And as we learned last week, Guy's Grocery Challenge or whatever that show was.
Well, but now let's be fair. There's nothing about AEW that has anything to do with sports programming.
Well, that's, you could certainly make that argument. But again, January 8th, NXT was at 721. This past week, they were at 759. January 8th, AEW was at 947. Now they're at 715.
You know why? Because when you hear the same joke 17 times, it's not as funny by the time you get finished hearing it all that many times as it was the first time. All they're doing is telling the same joke every week on TV. And people are going to get tired of hearing the same joke with the same punchline, seeing the same wrestling matches with the same moves where nobody knows who's in charge or who they should root for or why anybody's mad, and nobody's taking it seriously anyway. So, folks, welcome to the world of big league wrestling now instead of your little indie fucking wrestling matches where you go in with no television, you show up and you entertain a small crowd of people that really want to be there, and they don't have to look at you again for months and months. But when you're on TV and you have to be good, and you have to hook people on a weekly basis, you have to get people interested in what you're doing and make them believe that you care about it. That's the hard part. And they ain't graduated yet. They ain't graduated third grade to become double knot spies yet because they're a bunch of fucking little kids playing in a goddamn kiddie pool. And I guess there's 715,000 people that are starved for some entertainment that are playing with them.
We have a comment from Tony Khan.
Oh, yes, please. Let's close with Khan.
This statement was issued on Twitter, a rather defensive statement. If anyone thinks I consider being a top 7 show on cable anything but a huge win, they're incorrect. A win in the demo is a win in the business, and this is a business. I know the industry wasn't talking about the demo as much 20 years ago, but it's what drives our revenue today. God.
Well, yeah.
And that's the same argument Chris Jericho made after he had lost head-to-head against Sasha Banks. It's the one a lot of people focus on, saying that it's the key demo that matters, not the actual amount of overall viewers.
Yeah. All right. Well, the average or the overall viewers is indicative of the fact that a lot of people don't like your fucking bullshit, Tony. So you should have started with talent instead of fucking goofballs that you were fucking taken with. And you should have started with experience instead of a bunch of people that had the next great idea. And now you're stuck with this and couldn't happen to a nicer guy, and fuck all of you. I'm disgusted with this whole thing. I want to go eat my cheeseburgers that I promised myself for having to sit through these 2 fucking shows. Can we do that now?
Yes, but can you stop ripping up your notes? I keep telling you, there's something we could do with them that would be beneficial to the world of wrestling or to your bank account or something.
I tell you what, if I get the chance to take these notes and like I tried to take my white jacket on TBS and shove them down Paulie's throat, if I can shove these down Tony Khan's throat or whichever orifice on his body is biggest, I may have to stretch one out, then I'll save the notes. Otherwise, they can all go get fucked because I'm about to eat some cheeseburgers. And next week, I have a feeling we're going to do this again because I want to see Damian Priest and Cameron Grimes on NXT. And I want to see if anybody will just come out and on next week's AEW and just say, we're sorry, folks. We really have no idea what the fuck we've been doing. And we apologize for offending all of you wrestling fans. And we're going to try to actually start trying now. Maybe they'll do that.
Well, that's certainly not going to happen because those checks are still being issued each and every week. But let me just make a quick comment here, Jim. Of course, you can hear classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience, patreon.com/Cornette. And we just put up a 2-part episode with Lance Russell. Check that out right now. And also, the Drive-Thru this past week, we did a watch-along of the Midnight Express versus the Southern Boys, one of the great tag team matches of 1990 from the Great American Bash 1990. And we're going to be introducing more watch-alongs regularly on the Drive-Thru in the weeks ahead. Is that correct?
Tell them the truth is to keep me sane. We're going to watch at least one classic wrestling match involving some great talent every week so that I don't fucking just go off and kill somebody.
And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a big watch-along, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin at WrestleMania. I think everyone's going to want to hear that one.
The only match that I can say with a full-throated endorsement that I ever saw in the WWF that belonged on a classic Crockett Starrcade card. It was that good.
It wasn't the only match. What about the match they had at Survivor Series? I thought that match was great too.
Well, okay, but now they're being hogs. If you do, well, only Austin and Brett get to have.
And then next week, Davey Boy versus Diesel. Watch along.
Oh, good God! just for the fucking elbow drop on the leg, and that's it. All right. Anyway, otherwise than that, we're going to get out of here, folks. Thank you for hanging with us. We didn't mean to go this long, but I was cranked up. And there's so much to cover when people are so stupid in so many different ways. For all of you who love me, I love you back. For all of you who hate me, you're fucking morons. And for everybody else, we'll be back next week on the program. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.